In these areas where ecosystems are particularly fragile, the impact of this crisis is magnified. Rising temperatures, erratic rainfalls, droughts, natural hazards, food security, land degradation, they often threaten not only livelihoods, but also the very fabric of natural resources management and governance. We are witnessing actually a dangerous unraveling of the very delicate balance of socio-ecological systems. The next day's presentations and discussions, and this is something that is really crucial. It's not only about presentations, it's about the conversations that we can actually engage with at the conference. They are addressing all these critical issues, asking the hard and really difficult questions, and exploring different approaches, how we can address and resolve over and over again those issues. The bracket that ties everything a little bit together across this very different and this huge magnitude of research areas that we will be seeing the next days is the question how we can achieve this very much needed societal transformation towards sustainability. But before we jump into the keynote lectures that we actually have this afternoon, I see my speakers are already here. I see Dr. Franz Fischler, welcome at BOKU, at your alma mater. Anja Gassner is already here, and welcome Lerato Tekaili from Wageningen University. I would like to welcome our rector and also a couple of other distinguished persons that actually are here with us today that have prepared some welcome addresses. First, I would like to invite Professor Eva Schuler-Steindl to take the stage. She's our rector at BOKU University. Madam Rector, may I ask you for your welcome address? Yeah.
That's it. Sounds much better. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to Tropentag 2024 here at BOKU University. We are really honored to host this great event, which brings together over 900 participants from more than 80 countries, both in person and online, to address the pressing global challenges of our time, as we have heard. I would like to extend a special welcome to our two distinguished guests. We have more, but these are very distinguished. Dr. Franz Fischler, a BOKU alumnus who has played an important role in European agricultural policy as a federal minister of agriculture and forestry in Austria, and later as European Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development and Fisheries. Dear Dr. Fischler, your lifelong dedication to sustainable development continues to inspire the global community. It's great to have you here today. So I think that deserves an applause. A very warm welcome also to Ambassador Dr. Peter Huber, Director General of Development at the Federal Ministry of European and International Affairs. Dr. Huber, your leadership in international development and diplomacy has been essential in fostering global partnerships for a more sustainable future. Thanks for being here also. And a very warm welcome also to all the other keynote speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, as we gather for Tropentag 2024 under the theme, Explore Opportunities for Managing Natural Resources and a Better Life for All, we not only reflect on the global crisis we face, particularly the climate crisis, but also emphasize the urgent need for action. Extreme weather events as droughts, floods are escalating, and challenges in tropical and subtropical regions worsening food insecurity, and poverty. Our collective goal must be to find solutions that are not only effective, but also equitable. And Boku University has a long tradition as being a pioneer in transformative research, particularly through our Institute and Cluster of Development Research. The work conducted here is crucial in creating resilient and sustainable solutions, especially in regions most affected by socioeconomic and environmental challenges. And we are proud of the collaborations we have fostered with partners from science, civil society, politics, and industry to develop strategies that address global inequalities and enhance the resilience of communities facing these crises. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to the entire team of the Institute for Development Research, especially to Professor Andreas Melcher. Please, Andy. And also to Stephanie Lemke. Thanks, Stephanie. For all your efforts in organizing this conference, but also a very special thanks to our event management, to the IT support, to the facility management, and all the other people from Boku that made this event possible. So I would also, that also deserves an applause. I also would like to extend a special welcome to the many young scientists participating in this conference, especially those coming from regions where opportunities for attending international events are limited. Tropentag provides a unique platform for sharing groundbreaking research on sustainable resource management, climate adaptation, and food and nutrition sovereignty. And we are happy to support this inclusive and accessible forum where new ideas can flourish. Ladies and gentlemen, as we embark on the next few days of discussions, workshops, and presentations, I encourage all of you to engage fully with one another and take inspiration from the knowledge shared here. Together, we can create pathways for a more sustainable future, address the challenges of our time, and improve the quality of life for communities across the globe. Thank you for your participation, and I wish you all a fruitful and inspiring Tropentag 2024.
Thank you so much, Madam Rector. Ms. Leonore G. Wessler, Federal Minister for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology, apologizes that she can't be here with us today, but she's talking already. But she has sent us, she has sent us a welcome address that we would like to show you.
The Tropentag 2024 conference, distinguished guests from around the world, and especially our young researchers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is both a pleasure and an honor to welcome you to the Tropentag 2024 in Vienna. While I regret that I cannot be with you in person, I want to convey through this video message my deep support for this conference and, more importantly, for your dedicated efforts to contribute to a more sustainable future. The theme of this year's conference, Explore Opportunities for Managing Natural Resources and a Better Life for All, underscores the pivotal role of science in driving sustainable development. Science acts as a beacon, guiding us with the evidence we need on the journey towards a good life for all. Tropentag stands as one of the largest gatherings focused on development-oriented research for the tropics, subtropics, and transition regions. However, it is not just the size of the conference that makes it remarkable. It is the diversity of scientific backgrounds, the wealth of knowledge and experience you all bring from your respective countries, and above all, your commitment to exchange ideas and engage in interdisciplinary networking. This is what makes Tropentag truly invaluable. Today, each global crisis, be it climate change, biodiversity loss, or resource scarcity, presents significant challenges on its own. Yet, it is their interconnectedness that complicates our response. This makes it all the more crucial that we collaborate across disciplines, perspectives, and visions to address these issues comprehensively. One might wonder why a conference focused on the tropics is being held in Vienna and what relevance this has to Austria, a country that, apart from the record number of tropical nights we have experienced this summer, seems far removed from such regions. However, just as these crises are interconnected, so too are the countries and regions of the world which suffer its consequences. Take deforestation as just one of many examples. Deforestation is a major driver of global challenges, exacerbating the climate crisis and accelerating biodiversity loss. The European Union, through its consumption of imported agricultural products, is responsible for about 10% of global deforestation, largely due to massive imports of palm oil and soy, commodities that link our lifestyles here in Vienna directly to the tropics. This global impact of our local actions imposes a responsibility on us, making initiatives like the regulation on deforestation-free products and the nature restoration law so vital. These efforts are crucial as we realize the need to think beyond our national borders. Here, science is a key ally, helping us identify the steps we must take to understand these connections and enhance the synergies between our political goals. In the context of rural development and sustainable resource management, we must consider the links to the urgently needed transformation of our agri-food system, climate change mitigation and adaptation, social and technological innovations, global poverty reduction, and the fight against gender-based structural inequalities. The Tropentag conference provides a critical platform for addressing these links and exploring new, innovative solutions. Over the coming days, the presentations and discussions will showcase a wealth of evidence demonstrating the possibilities and best practices for tackling these challenges, and particularly the interconnectedness that I have emphasized. I cannot stress enough the importance of this conference as a space where you share insights that extend beyond academic boundaries, where practical solutions are developed, and where practitioners and policymakers can align their actions with your findings. I wish you all a fruitful and interesting time at Tropentag 2024. May you gain new insights, foster meaningful exchange, and find renewed encouragement and confirmation in your commitment to work together for positive change towards the Sustainable Development Goals and a better life for all.
Thank you so much, Minister Gewessler. Now I would like to welcome Ambassador Dr. Huber at Boku University. Welcome, Ambassador. It's great to have you with us today. He was already invited by our rector, but let me introduce again. Dr. Huber is Director General of the Department of Development at the Federal Ministry of European and International Affairs. Welcome at Boku. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. Rektor Schulef Steindl, Dr. Fischer, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to be invited to speak here at the opening of this year's Tropentag conference. The geographic definition of tropics comprise all regions between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. In terms of our development cooperation, it comprises all our African focus countries and focus regions, which leads me directly to the point I would like to emphasize today. Successful development cooperation needs all the know-how that will be exchanged and discussed in the course of this conference, particularly expertise on urgently needed transformation in agriculture and food systems, agroecology, livestock management, food and nutrition sovereignty, forestry, sustainable water resources, environmental conservation, socioecology, sustainable natural resources management, and poverty alleviation. You might have noticed that I'm quoting key topics from the briefing document for speakers presented by the organizers of the Tropentag. But at the same time, I'm enumerating key challenges of our 3 years program on development cooperation, which is the programmatic basis of our work. I want to use and take this opportunity to express the sincere gratitude of the Ministry of European and International Affairs to the University of Life Sciences for years and decades of successful cooperation, particularly in the field of development cooperation. The University of Bodenkultur Life Sciences is a reliable partner when it comes, for example, to the implementation of the Agenda 2030 in and by Austria. BOKO is a key player in UNINETS, the Austrian cluster for scientific institutions committed to the SDGs in Austria. In 2022, the UNINETS options report was submitted to the federal government. It presented 150 options for implementing the Agenda 2030 in Austria. This was followed by the excellent cooperation in the second Austrian Voluntary National Review on the implementation of the Agenda 2030, which was presented this July in New York at the UN, jointly by Federal Minister Caroline Edstadler on behalf of the Federal Chancellor and Mr. Franz Fehr, Professor Franz Fehr of BOKO. This joint presentation, this joint approach by politics and science was received with explicit appreciation by the international community. And we want to continue along this path. Today's agenda of the conference includes a workshop on the role of politics and other stakeholders like universities in fighting multiple crises, and experts of the ministry will participate in it. Austrian Development Corporation is also grateful to BOKO's engagement in several university cooperations with scientific institutions of our partner countries in sub-Saharan Africa and the European neighborhood. In 2010, we launched a university cooperation program, a PEER, short for the Austrian Partnership Program for Higher Education and Research, which is currently operating already in its third phase. BOKO scientists have been active in such multi-annual cooperations in a broad range of scientific disciplines, from organic farming to river basin management, just to mention key examples. We believe these networks, the scientific exchange leading to concrete projects and the application of scientific investigation is of key importance in addressing and overcoming global challenges. Summing up, we are grateful that we have what we have achieved so far, and we are confident that our cooperation on applied science dedicated to sustainable development will continue to bear fruit. And we are also convinced we need more of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all an inspiring Tropentag, a fruitful and constructive exchange, and a successful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And now I have my microphones ready, and I'm looking for two important persons for the Tropentag. Professor Stefanie Lemke, over here. Hallo Steffi. And Andreas Melcher. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Both of us, we would like to welcome you as the Institute of Development Research. As we all know, this is a team effort. You can't pull off something like this if you don't have a great team. Many of our team are here in blue t-shirts supporting us, but also not always visible. And the main credit really goes to Andy Melcher, who put all of his energy behind this conference years ago. He always said, we have to do Tropentag at BOKU. And you did so much and all your networks, so you're also the best person to pull something like this off. Of course, ATSAF is a huge support, but you always have to implement things in the university where this happens. So I'm very appreciative, very grateful to Andy. And I want to say that our team at IDR is also a great team, supporting each other, because otherwise this is not possible. And before I hand over to Andy, just let me mention one thing. We had a very important workshop this morning. It was on the vision of the Maasai in northern Tanzania, on their vision of nature conservation. We have one of their representatives here, Joseph Moses Olishangai. He's from the Maasai and he shared his vision. There's a great support network here. And the vision statement was launched today, as well as a policy brief on biodiversity. And I just want to say we will share this on the BOKU homepage. So these documents are available and they were launched today. And Lerato, our keynote speaker, will also go into some of these issues on nature conservation. So this was already a great start for us. Lots of sharing of people who are familiar in this topic and lots of networking. And now over to you, Andy, and a big thank you to you for pulling all of this off.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephanie. Yes, a kind of a dream became true, and I really want to welcome you. And I want to thank you. I heard so many thanks to me, but I want to thank you all for coming. You come so far from so far away, and with so many difficulties to get the visa and other things, and even also the closer neighbors, our friends in Germany, the cooperation with the universities in ATSAF, they always supported us completely. And I want to name only a few persons which without them, this wouldn't have been possible to speak here today. And first of all, there's Eric Tilkes. He's not here, but you have seen him in the registration. A big applause for Eric Tilkes. He is really the mastermind of this conference since years. And I asked him, do you have a handout or a standard program for the orientation to plan such an event? And he says, no, I have everything in my mind. So that's Eric. And it worked really well with some few meetings and some discussion. And here at BOKU University, I had a great support by Andreas Bauer. Andreas or Andy Bauer, he's, I call him the technical director of the Tropentag, and he also managed all these complicated things with this streaming and these logins and all these things. And last but not least, the CEO, I call her the CEO of Tropentag, is Julia Mainle. Julia is coordinating the team with the blue shirts, the helpers, the student assistants, what we have here. From BOKU, we have 2 of them here, and if you have any question, they will guide you and they will help you for sure. Please stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also happy to the BOKU University, finally, last but not least, and to the rectorate to make this possible and to give us the support. And they built these new buildings here at BOKU. So to say so, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have been, we had one conference here, but not in this location, on this campus at BOKU. It was in the old economic university downtown, to say so. And now we have this new building since 6 years with this fantastic hall here and this fantastic auditorium. And we will have the plenaries here in this building. You will also find the food upstairs in here in the Tüvi Mensa. And you will also find the vegan food in the Tüvi Beisel. It's a student's location, a student's restaurant where you can also get vegan food. This is I want to announce, and we have the food truck there. I think we have plenty of food now. And we got luckily some sponsoring from the Ströck, from the bakery in Vienna. So we get really every day fresh bread so that we will not really suffer. And also we got support from the Billa. From the Billa is the Austrian Rewe concern with chips and Soletti and also some drinks. Thank you to them also. I wanted to say this. And talking about the buildings, and then I will close here. Talking about the buildings, we have this new building, and then when you enter the registration, we have the 100 years old building. So this one is maybe 5 years old, and we have the 100 years old building, the Exner House. The Exner House was built as a kind of a hospital for the economic people, yeah, the Kaufmannschaft Vienna, I don't know to translate. So it's 100 years old and it's a World Heritage, it's protected. And behind them, we have a also interesting building, which is 50 years old. It's a steel construction, completely steel construction, which was built to support the steel crisis or the steel crisis in Vienna. And then we have a wooden building, a very new one, 5 years old, a wooden building, the Ilse Valentin House, a famous researcher at BOKU, a lady, one of the first researchers, where you have also the poster sessions in the Exner House, in the very old brick building, you will have the oral sessions, and in the steel building, we will have party or something like that, I hope so, yeah. And to say so, we have a reception by the rectorate invitation today in the evening. I will talk about this later, and my time is over. Thank you.
Danke. Thank you very much. So the party today is in the steel building? Yeah. All right. So remember, steel building, this is where the parties are happening. Last welcome address. Volkert. How many Tropentage did you attend? Oh, I set you up, huh? There you are.
Well, you put me already in the dinosaur corner.
I know.
And after that,
You're still here.
After that, in the fossil corner. So I'm actually a Tropentag fossil. I have attended about 20 of them. So, yeah, no worries. I think I still look quite presentable for that.
True.
My name is Volkert Asch. I am a professor at the University of Hohenheim in Germany. I'm there for crop water stress management in the tropics and subtropics. That's where I earn my money with, and I keep my keep. But I'm also the head of ATSAF, which is the Research Council for Tropical and Subtropical Research. And this is an association which has about 350 members. So we are quite small, but quite active also. And ATSAF has been tasked with helping organizing the Tropentag so that we have a continuous memory on how these things are done. Right now, we have a living memory, as was already mentioned with Eric. We don't know what happens when he ever leaves us, but we, of course, also have an institutional memory, and ATSAF makes sure that this institutional memory will continue. And not only that, we are a central hub for attracting major funding so that we can actually have this conference here, and we are helping every local organizer to obtain funds to make this a conference that we are keeping as cheap as possible. Yeah? Because we want to support and help young scientists to present their work, to start out in their academic life at a conference with many, many people. And we also have realized that it's very important to do this on an annual basis because the world is changing so fast that we have something to talk about every year again. And so I would like to mention that the German Ministries of Cooperation and the German Ministry of Agriculture have funded this conference, as they do regularly. The foundation Fiat Panis regularly funds this Tropentag wherever it happens. AgriNatura is part of it, and this year also Crop Trust International has sponsored this conference. ATSAF is collecting this money and bringing it back to the local organizers so that they don't have to bother with that on top of it. And since we are trying to support young scientists, it's always my role to introduce some of them here. And I was actually supported by this idea by a speaker of our ministry yesterday afternoon when we had our networking event here. She said, all your knowledge and everything that you do in academia is worth nothing if it doesn't reach the people who have to make the decisions and those who actually have to act upon it. And that is something which is really a task. You know, scientific people may be very, very brave and strong in their science, but they're not necessarily good communicators. And that is really sometimes an issue because you may have a brilliant idea, but it just doesn't come across. And then I have been speaking during my career as a fossil, actually, I have been speaking to journalists quite often, and I had a frustrating feeling that they don't understand what I'm talking about. Yeah? And I'm a teacher myself, and I teach my students, and I think that I can come across relatively clearly in what I want to convey, but apparently not with journalists. And so in 2010, the Mercator Foundation had an idea of trying to bring in young scientists and try to train them as journalists. And that idea took off. Atsaf was absolutely flabbergasted by that idea, and we took over. And so since then, since 2011, Atsaf is financing this initiative where we are bringing in 12 young scientists, people who are just at their master's level or slightly beyond, who have done science, who know what science is, who have studied science and have a scientific mind, but who also want to have a second leg in their career in journalism. And so we offer an opportunity to 12 young scientists all over Europe to apply for this student reporter position at the Tropentag, where they got already a small workshop, an introduction into how the whole thing works. And now they are reporting from the Tropentag in different channels of social media mainly for the next 3 days. And they are tasked to document with pictures, with videos, with interviews, with blog entries and so on, to get on your nerves and get your science out into the open. And so they are trying to actually convey your message in a way that they think works for the public. And I would like to ask you to step forward here quickly, show your faces so that you know who you have in front of you. And
well,
yes,
applause.
come on, hop, hop. So here we are. Yes, and you see, this is every year an interesting task. We get about 60 applications. We want to have 12 of them. It should be gender balanced. It should be kind of international. And this is the result of this year's crop. So I'm quite happy to see these faces. And all of them have an idea that maybe they can tell some of the science to the world in different ways, in a picture, in a blog entry, and so on. And so that's what they're going to try. And I ask you for your support for their task. Yeah? You can see the products online in all the different channels. They will make sure that you can see it. But when they approach you for an interview, if they want to have a picture and so on, don't shy away, just talk to them. Yeah, make them your voice. I think that's a good idea. So, and that is it. They have prepared a short video to introduce themselves, and I think we can play this now. And that is all I have to say. I thank you for listening to me, and I wish you a wonderful Tropentag. If you have any questions about Atsaf, come to the Members' Assembly tonight, 19:30, and join us there for fruitful discussions, and maybe even become a member. That would be very helpful for us too. Thank you very much.
Servus everyone and welcome to the Tropentag 2024. My name is Božidar Ilieva and we are thrilled to have you with us today.
Hi, I'm Tochiko Okafo, and we are a fantastic team of student reporters bringing you updates, highlights, and interviews from this incredible event.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and you don't want to miss what we have planned for you. It's going to be an amazing experience.
Hey, it's me, Plenary, who will be covering from keynote speaker to breakout session. For more updates, stay tuned.
My name is Angela Nyakato. We shall be on ground covering all the events and the energy of this day.
Hi, I'm Polash, and we are here to share you the moments you won't find anywhere. Enjoy and take care.
My name is Katerina, and we have a jam-packed schedule, so follow along with us and stay in the loop.
I'm Farzin, and whether you are here in person or watching online, we've got you covered.
Hi, I'm Anushka. Make sure to keep up with our interviews. We'll be talking to some top speakers and guests.
And I'm Jack, and we're here to bring you the best moments from the conference, and we can't wait to show you.
Hi, I am Malika, and we are here to make sure you don't miss a thing. We are going to bring you exclusive content all day long.
Hello, I am Pawan. Don't forget to follow the Tropentag 2024 on social media channels. Enjoy your day.
Welcome to Tropentag 2024!
Thank you so much. Oh, I'm on. I'm on. Am I on? No, I'm not on. Am I on or off? Hello. You switched me off. They switched me off. No, now I'm back on. Volker, thank you very much. You heard, we will hold each and every one of you accountable, participating with the student assistants. Andy Melcher already has his radar on, and I can see him already spotting. A big thanks once more and a big applause to all our welcome addresses. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks to Boku University for making this happening today. Before we jump into the next program point, which are actually the keynote lectures, it breaks my heart actually to see people standing there in the back. So can everybody show a little bit where there are free spots? There are so many people standing there in the back. Look, there's plenty of space. I promise you no casualties in the first round, in the first rows. So there's plenty of spots over there. Whoever wants to have a seat, please come in front. I feel super sorry people standing as long as we have free seats here. While doing some changes over here, I would like to invite our panelists and our keynote speakers. Dr. Franz Fischler, may I ask you to the front? Anja Gassner, hello. And Lerato Tekali, may I ask you to the front? Take a seat.
Haben wir eine besondere Sitzordnung?
1, 2, 3. Lerato, may I ask you here?
2, ich mal 2.
Ja.
2 ist mit, ist gut. Hallo. Anja.
Great. That makes me happy.
Hallo. Anja, ich kenne Sie, Sie kennen mich nicht.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Cool, you found some spots here. Feeling comfortable? Yeah, good. Cool. Nice. So, again, a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into the keynote lectures. What we will do, we have 3 keynotes. We will run through all 3 of them. Questions and debate will be afterwards. So please note down your questions. We also have student assistants over here that will actually help us afterwards with the microphones. There's also our fantastic Boku microphone that we will use afterwards. So please be a little bit patient, enjoy the keynote lectures, and then we will have hopefully a lively discussion afterwards. Let me introduce the 3 persons on the panel today. Dr. Franz Fischler. He was already introduced by our rector. He is an alumnus from Boku University holding a PhD in agriculture. He was an elected member of the Austrian National Council and a federal minister of agriculture and forestry on the national level, but he was also active on the European level as a European Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development. From 2012 to 2020, he was the president of the renowned think tank European Forum Alpbach. And since 2015, he's the president of the board of trustees of the Austrian Institute of Advanced Studies. And I think we will just start with your lecture, and I will introduce you step by step. May I ask, you have your microphone with you, I think? Is it on?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. So he will be talking about building sustainable bridges between scientists, politicians, and stakeholders to establish sound policies for global natural resource management and rural development. Dr. Fischler, very warm welcome to your alma mater. It's great to have you with us, and I'm looking forward to your talk.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for inviting me to this very important conference. As you have heard from the moderator, the title of my keynote is rather complicated, and I should deal with all these aspects which were mentioned within less than 10 minutes. So it's quite a challenge. Therefore, let me put what I am going to do in more simple words. What I would like to do is I would like to explore opportunities from a political perspective, logical for a former politician, and I will focus on the role Europe should play in the future in the sustainable development of the global tropical and subtropical zones. Unfortunately, I must say Europe is in all these zones on the loser side. In Southeast Asia, the leading role is more and more with China, and Europe, on the other side, still produces, as also the minister mentioned, harm because of the palm oil production and the deforestation of rainforest for this purpose. The South American tropical zones, mainly Brazil, are dominated by the US, with a growing independence on the Brazilian side. The deforestation in mainly for the soy production is decreasing, but still hasn't stopped yet. And in Africa, the most important zone for us Europeans, China is more and more dominating, and Europe is not able to put an end to the lasting debate on neocolonialism and imperialism. You have seen, I guess, the pictures from the Africa-China summit. You have heard the promises of Xi Jinping, 45 billion mainly credits, and 1 million more working places, more jobs. But on the other hand, if China had to comply with the 0.7% GDP, this would be 10 times as much as promised by Mr. Xi. But Xi got also an enormous applause when he stated that the process of Western modernization created a lot of harm for many developing countries, implicitly saying this will be totally different if the cooperation is more with China. I think all those are right who say that the big problem of our time, be it climate change, be it the demographic problems, migration, and so on and so forth, can only be resolved if politics, the business sector, scientists, and the civil society go together and work together for sustainable solutions. And exactly for that, we need the bridges to listen to each other and to work together. And I think here Europe can play a crucial role, but only when Europe takes initiatives. And for the moment, I must say, there aren't many European initiatives going on in the international scene. So I see, ladies and gentlemen, 4 areas for promising actions. The first, and in the context of our conference, most important action is the science sector. Also, the cooperation and bridge building in this sector is more advanced than in others. There are still many opportunities for doing more and doing better. I think Europe should be more generous in supporting modern scientific infrastructure in the tropical and subtropical countries. Second, the European universities should engage in partnerships with universities in these areas, and the European Union should establish a kind of Erasmus program for PhD students and junior scientists coming from these countries. The second action should be in the business sector. It is clearly not enough if development cooperation is limited to the government level. Much more promising would be to provide better investment conditions for foreign investors. And this is something for the next European Commission, because, as you maybe know, President Ursula von der Leyen announced to establish a new portfolio for Africa. And I think the commissioner responsible for this portfolio would be well advised when he or she would deal with new forms of economic cooperation as a priority. And then the third field of action, in my view, could be international activities. It would be of utmost importance that Europe takes initiatives in the different UN bodies, in the WTO, in the OECD, in the IMF, and so on and so forth. In all these relevant institutions, because only then we can make the necessary progress in the field of international cooperation. And I think such initiatives can then also help to overcome the European burdens from the past. However, events like today's event can help to make the bridge building a reality and cooperation in the science sector a tangible undertaking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fischler. Our second keynote speaker is Dr. Anja Gassner. Welcome at Boku University, Dr. Gassner.
Yeah, that works. Brilliant.
Anja is the director of the European branch of CIFOR, ECRAF. She holds a PhD in agroecology and has a further educational background in environmental geochemistry. The interesting thing about her career pathway is that she covers all of the important sectors, actually, ranging from academia, consultancy, to policy and governmental support, mainly focusing on biodiversity within the agricultural sector. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
That's about it.
Today, she will talk about the role of science and innovation in delivering the SDGs, nature-based solution with trees. It's great to have you with us today, Anja, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Super. Thank you for the really nice introduction. Welcome, everybody. And I would like to say that I'm super honored and super thrilled to actually be standing here today and to be part of the opening day and give a keynote. I'm not one of the dinosaurs of the Tropentag, but I did attend my first Tropentag in 2021, Witzenhausen, I think so, when I was just embarking on my PhD. And at the time I was with the, doesn't exist anymore, tells me how old I am, the Bundesforschungsanstalt für Landwirtschaft in Braunschweig. And in 2002, when I finished my PhD, I made a conscious decision to move and relocate to the Global South, where I've been for 20 years. And I'm looking at everybody here, and I'm extremely honored to talk to you about the title today is the role of science and innovation, to actually look at all of you. We are all in science and innovation, and especially looking at how many of you, we would probably say early career scientists, but you're just embarking on this journey of seeing where you can contribute to this change and this urgently, we heard this earlier, this urgent transition that we all have to deliver as a society. I would like to give a moment. The talk has been put together with a couple of my colleagues. Can I ask all the C4E craft scientists that are in the room to just stand up?
Ooh, stand up.
If there's none, then they're missing my keynote, which would be just wave. So we have a booth. We also have a session to talk about this. So just come if anything raises your interest. Catch one of us to have a conversation. So I'm taking already my 10 minutes, I'm afraid. So let me just actually dive in here. All of you know this. So since 2009, we as a society have managed to cross 6 of the 9 boundaries. I think that's familiar to all of you which are working in the space. I think the Earth Overshoot Day this year was on 4th of August, meaning it has taken us 7 months to use all the resources that by 7 months to actually get to the point where we used all the resources that the planet needs to replenish to keep us alive. Also, just came out is you, or in some of us being seasoned, but most of you starting this career, you start working in a time where we see changes we've never seen before. It's a very unprecedented time. The changes that we see have fundamental implications on the ecosystems we're working on, and therefore also on the communities we're working on. And the question that we all have to ask ourselves is, we bringing together the universities that are organizing the Tropentag, we're bringing together huge wealth of data and information in the space, but is that data at this moment still valid? Is the data that we knew about the ecosystems, the collection that we're all very good in describing these systems, will that help us to come to the solution that we need now? The IPCC report last year, I think you have all seen this as well. While we are in a very much in an uncertainty, not knowing what the tipping points are doing and what each tipping point will actually trigger, one thing we do know for certain is that the extent to which I have children which are 9, 18, and 20, our children, you, will be affected by these tipping points is definitely determined by the action and the choices that we're doing now and in the near future. That is for certain. We also, all of you working in the space, we also actually have solutions. So while we have a lot of uncertainties, we do know that food, agriculture, and land use is part of the solution because they're contributing to the carbon emission to a large degree. And the way we manage those will make a total difference. And the project drawdown, I think most of you should know this as well. I mean, the 3 key actions that they're asking for is address waste and diets. We do know we need a change and transition our food system, protect ecosystems, and shift agricultural practices. There's I could have picked any, but I like the drawdown project quite a lot. There's a lot of solutions. We have the solutions. And there's a map of the CGIAR, we are being one of the CGIAR centers. All these solutions are part and parcel of the CGIAR portfolio. And most of you, I believe, have somehow worked or will be working with the CGIAR, either directly by being employed through the CGIAR or because you're partners. And we will only succeed if we do work together. Today, I will specifically look at trees and forests because that is what our organization, C4E-Craft, would be particularly interested. It's close to my heart because I've worked on it for the last 20 years. So trees and forests are the nature-based solution to deliver the change in the agriculture system. Trees can deliver 1/3 of the climate solution. Soils account for 1/3 of the global carbon stock. And I'm not going to go into like now how the trees contribute to the soil carbon stock. I think that should be common knowledge for all of you here. And forest, just numbers, forest net absorb 1.5 times more CO2 than the US is actually currently emitting. We also not only obviously are trees a carbon sink, but they are also, latest publication from last year, they've been largely overseen in climate modeling for their role of regulating the hydrological cycle. So forests are not the lungs only of the earth, as we used to say, but they're the heartbeat. Without forests, there will be no agriculture. If the Amazon basin goes, there will be no meat, no livestock production possible simply because we don't have rain. So in everything we do, we have to consider that. It's not just producing yield per hectare, it's producing the yield per hectare in a way that we prevent ecological tipping points. So C4E-Craft, we collect and create science-based evidence and knowledge to underpin and develop, co-develop with communities, nature-based solutions with trees and forests. I give you an example, and that's a publication all relating to one of our engagement landscape, and it's just an example of what we do and how we do it, and also what your future work could be like. It's the Yangambi landscape. It's a 100,000 hectare forest in the DRC. So based on the science and evidence and working with communities, stakeholders, and private sectors, we have planted over 2.5 million fast-growing indigenous trees across 3,000 hectares of degraded village lands. We trained over 150 charcoal producers on more efficient technologies. We created over 2,900 jobs. Also note, we're doing quite a bit of work on wildlife monitoring, so it's not only farming and agriculture. We supported over 60 hunters with alternative income generating activities, produced over 70 tons of alternative protein, alternative to bushmeat. And we have a very large education program where we have reached over 3,000 children and also have trained more than 250 MSc PhD students. This is particularly with the University of Kisangani in the DRC. In order to deliver the impact, to produce the science and make the science that we have and the knowledge that we have to deliver the impact we want to see, it's important to understand who can be change agents, because we are not implementing the change. Who's implementing the change are the community and the people that live in those landscapes. So we have started we have quite a strong program focusing on behavioral science. The question is like, if we want to scale innovations, like coming back to earlier, the solutions that the CGIAR, the technical solutions that the CGIAR has developed over 40 years of investment, 50, 60 in some centers, how do we make those technologies attractive to the farmers and the communities that have to implement them. Just featuring Kai, you can wave again. It's one that's Kai is leading that type of work. Is like if development programs are not taking into account what the aspirations and the dreams of local communities are, these programs will not stick. Nothing new. I think most of you by now actually know this, but it is, why am I repeating that, is your role as a scientist, how do you fit into that? We have work on decision making. We're now very much looking at household decision making, and once again, a lot of programs still look at the household as the unit of decision making, but it's the individual person. It's how do we find this one person, and what does this one person need that can be a change maker to actually be a light for their community, to bring out the changes or to bring the new innovation, do the transition. What do these people need? What are their bottlenecks? What are their obstacles? And how can we help them to overcome that? If you're interested to hear more about what we do in the space of decision-making and behavioral science, I would invite you to come tomorrow to the panel, Trees, People and Choices in Fragile Situations. But not only are the individual farmers and communities we work with change agents, but it's also everybody in the landscape that we work in. How do we scale? We scale because we co-design and co-learn with a range of partners. And this is just giving you an overview of the different people that we all have to work with. And here important, we as scientists, we hold one parcel of the knowledge, but not the only. There's a lot of other knowledge holders within the landscape, and only together we will be able to come out with the solutions that are needed for this particular place. An example from Peru, where we have been working on agroforestry concessions. So, and it's I think it's also a project where we had support from the GIZ, so thanks on that, and managed to secure for farmers 40 years of secure tenure. We reached 120,000 households. We worked on an area of 1.5 million hectares of a landscape, which is now better connected because of agroforestry concessions. And we brought together 25 of local regional organizations to work together. This is what we call as a landscape approach. Only if we work in partnership, we can address these challenges. I'm not going to read all of this, but it's just coming back. This is just a translation from basically the more graphical image to what are these people that you need to look out for? Who can help you to scale your knowledge and your science? I'm almost done and just want to briefly talk about the Global Landscape Forum. C4E-Craft is extremely proud of hosting the secretariat of the GLF. The GLF is the largest communication platform in the space of the SDGs. What the GLF is doing, we're blending science and knowledge with innovative events and communication campaigns. Specifically, I think you mentioned that earlier, Volker. How do you bridge the gap between research, policy, and implementation? If the science and knowledge that you have stay in this room, it will not do anything. So we have reached 2.9 billion people over 10 years. We have 270 times the engagement has grown, and that's what you can see from we started in 2016. We have by now 25,000 organizations that are connected through the Global Landscape Forum, and we're reaching 170 million on social media. The GLF is not C4E-Craft. We do hold the secretariat, but we essentially have connected 33 charter members. So all events on communication campaigns done from the Global Landscape Forum are done in knowledge committees with all of these charter members. This is everybody who is working in the space of restoration. And with that, I would like to just summarize. So what's the role of science and innovation? What do we need? We need to leverage cutting-edge research to drive tangible impact for communities and ecosystems. We need to implement projects around known solutions while embedding research to understand how to scale. We need research to understand how and why people can become change makers. What holds them back is particularly important. Combine scientific expertise, analytical skills with exceptional communication skills to bridge gaps between research, policy, and political implementation. And do come and talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anja. It was very inspiring. Speak with a lot of things that has to be done and what we actually have to achieve. Our third keynote presentation and our third keynote speaker, I would like to introduce you Dr. Lerate Takoli. She's affiliated at Wageningen University and research in the Netherlands, and where she works as a lecturer in the Sociology of Development and Change group. She's also a senior researcher at the University of the Western Cape in South Africa at the Institute for Poverty, Land and Agrarian Studies. Her research focuses on the historic development of property rights in land and environmental resources and how they actually co-evolve with labor regimes. Dr. Takoli will share insights in her work, asking whether biodiversity conservation provides a better life for conservation laborers. Dr. Takoli, a very warm welcome at Boku University, and I'm curious to learn more about your research activities. Oh, and you're up and running. Perfect. Almost. Almost.
I have my lovely notes, so I don't want to oppress you with all the text. So we'll try and make it look pretty for you. But while that's being sorted, so today I want to get a feel of who's been on safari. I have, and I loved it. So we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to go on safari, so you can imagine your favorite safari location. Is it the Kruger National Park in South Africa? Do you want to go to the Masai Mara? Do you want to go somewhere in West Africa where you're going to see some endangered species? But we're going to have a different safari. We're not going to do all the nature stuff that you can see on basically every other conservation website. We're going to do things a little uncomfortable today. We're going to dive into the things that I think, okay, still working? Yeah, we're going to dive into topics that really make us a bit uncomfortable, but I think are incredibly important in relation to biodiversity conservation. So the title of my talk today is, yes, perfect, thank you. Yeah, the title, the title of my talk today is, can biodiversity conservation provide a better life for conservation laborers? And I'm standing here talking about this topic today because Priscilla Claes came to Wageningen and she was like, oh my God, I want to see you at Tropentag. I was like, I'm coming. And also thank you to Stephanie, who has been facilitating this process. And of course, Andreas, who's now hiding behind the thingamajiggy there. I appreciate all the efforts of getting me here in spite of very dramatic train experience yesterday. So, biodiversity conservation is truly, undoubtedly, one of the most important sectors of our time. And while Katharina was, presenting sort of the theme of the presentation, there's a lot of feedback. Is that me? How do I make that not happen? Oh, this thing, maybe? Yeah? Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah. While Katharina was presenting the theme of the conference today, she spoke extensively to the sort of immense environmental issues that we're experiencing today. And biodiversity conservation is important in this setting because it promises not only to ameliorate some of the global ecological challenges we see in relation to extinction, but also proponents of conservation keep telling us that this is a great opportunity for poverty alleviation and hence job creation as well. And if we look at this SDG placard, we see that biodiversity conservation actually cuts across many themes in relation to the SDG. One of which is, of course, no poverty, because allegedly biodiversity conservation can protect against poverty, or rather can alleviate poverty, but also in relation to climate change, right? We're told that biodiversity conservation is a space where some of the carbon that is a lot in the air can be sequestered. So this is just to say biodiversity conservation is incredibly important for society. And according to the World Database on Protected Areas, there are over 300,000 protected areas in the world. And that is a lot. And not just that, according to the IUCN, about 15% of our land masses are protected, whereas 7% of our oceans are under protection. And we know that these figures are likely to increase, right? This morning we had a lovely discussion about biodiversity conservation and green grabbing. But as a result of this 30 by 30 agreement, we know that at least by 2030, there's ambitions to protect 30% of the world's land mass. Just to further underscore why this sector is incredibly important, biodiversity also contributes to a lot of GDPs of countries. There's reports suggesting that in Kenya alone, biodiversity has been contributing around 103 billion in revenues. So this is to just underscore that we're talking about an incredibly important sector here. It cannot be taken for granted. In fact, biodiversity, we are told, promises to fix some of the key issues that we're dealing in our time today. And Anya also spoke to some of those issues in her presentation. But this is all good and well, right? What about conservation laborers? I think if we're going to frame biodiversity conservation as a key sector, we also need to ask the question, can the current guise of biodiversity conservation provide a better life for conservation workers? And this is a pertinent question because if conservation is truly an important sector, we need to think about, what are the kind of labor conditions that conservation workers are living under. So again, Anya, I'm going to speak to you again. When you're talking about forests and the like, I wonder who is maintaining the forests? Who are these people who go out day in and day out to protect these landscapes? And I think we need to be curious about the people that take care of this nature, because at the end of the day, they are the people that are going to help ameliorate some of the global challenges that we spoke about earlier. And by conservation laborers here, I'm referring to rangers. So these are people that go out and make sure that, nature is protected in one way or the other. I'm talking about guides that while I go on safari or yourself will be out making sure that you spot a leopard in a tree or a bush somewhere. When I talk about conservation laborers, I'm also referring to hospitality staff in conservation lodges, right? Because those hospitality staff ensure that I and you have a magnificent tourist experience. So these are the kind of workers that I'm talking about when I refer to conservation laborers. According to the Department of Environment in South Africa alone, there are over 400,000 conservation laborers in South Africa. So we're talking about a mass of people that are out there protecting key biodiversity resources. Now, in my work, I have argued that biodiversity conservation initiatives actually do not provide equitable working conditions, especially for indigenous communities. And I build my analysis on other scholars like Tafazo Mushonga, who's looked at rangers in Zimbabwe. I'm looking at the work of Mano Ramos Sindela, Benjamin Neymark, who's also foregrounded concerns of conservation workers. And in this analysis, I suggest that, put bluntly, biodiversity conservation is actually a bad employer. And for the rest of this talk, I'm going to focus on key 3 themes that I think are important if we're going to start thinking about biodiversity conservation and how it can create a better life for people that actually work within conservation landscapes. I based this analysis on over a decade of research, doing ethnographic research and some archival work in Southern African conservation landscapes. By over a decade, I really just mean 11, but over a decade sounds a lot more exciting, of course. And we're going to dive right into it, right? I said it's going to be a little uncomfortable. Ta-da! Racism. If biodiversity on the African continent, and I would argue in South America as well, is going to create a better life for conservation workers, it needs to deal with the systemic racism within biodiversity conservation initiatives. And I'll give you a little nugget from my expertise in South Africa. I will not go into the whole history of colonialism and apartheid, but safe to say that most protected areas in South Africa are owned and managed by white people at the managerial level. Scientific staff in conservation areas are also typically white people. If we consider low-wage workers, on the other hand, we start seeing a color bar in the hierarchy of labor within biodiversity conservation. A lot of the low-wage conservationists that do the manual work of everyday protecting wildlife are typically Black workers and indigenous communities as well. And a real implication of this is that white people working in conservation earn on average a lot more than Black workers in conservation. Not just that, again, if we look at this sort of hiring hierarchy, within protected areas, low-wage conservation workers typically have very deplorable housing. So next time you go on safari, I invite you to just peek in where the rangers and the hospitality staff live, and then compare that with where the managers live. And there we will see deep socioeconomic inequalities in relation to who is treated fairly within biodiversity conservation. And an implication of this, of course, are far-reaching, but I want to highlight something that is dear to me, and that's in relation to family ties. Most conservation workers live on the reserve for, in South Africa, 21 days and 7 days off. In those 21 days, low-wage workers typically live in a little dorm or share a room with a colleague. Managers, on the other hand, get a family house, meaning that they can have their family or their spouses with them. An implication for this on African families is that families are separated for long periods of time. And because my work is based in South Africa, I can't but relate this to the history of migrant work during the apartheid era. So that's one little nugget. I think conservation needs to deal with the uncomfortable but ongoing systemic racism within the sector. The second issue, which is also related to racism, is the issue of differential value of life. I've already spoken to how this form of racism within biodiversity conservation can result in white workers' lives being appreciated more versus Black conservation workers. But here I want to do something a little different and suggest that biodiversity values the life of wildlife more than it does of conservation laborers. And we can experience this and see this explicitly in, again, a very small nugget. If we look at the amount of funding that has gone into protecting rhino in the past couple of years versus the funding that has gone towards making sure that conservation workers have a fair wage, it is incredibly dismal. At that very basic earning wage, what we see is that conservation typically values the life of rhino than it does the people that are actually protecting the rhino. And this differential value of life we know it in conservation, right? Some species are protected more than others. Elephants get a bit more airtime than pangolins. In fact, in spite of the fact that pangolins are the most trafficked species. But we see that actually conservation also creates a hierarchy of life in relation to people, but also other forms of life as well. That's the second issue that I think needs to be addressed before biodiversity conservation can create an equitable life for all. The third issue, which is also deeply uncomfortable, is the issue of gendered division of labor in protected areas. Typically, again, if you've been on safari, you will for sure experience this. The woman who comes to your lodge in the morning to clean your ecotourism lodge in the bush is a woman. I said that already, spoiler alert. The person who's going to take you out on your game drive, your sunset safari experience is typically a man. If you make a booking for a night stay, the person who's going to answer the phone is typically a woman. The people going out as anti-poaching units in protected areas are also typically men. What we see here is that biodiversity conservation tends to reinforce this gendered division of labor. And I think that's incredibly problematic, especially, again, if we read it within the context of the Sustainable Development Goals. And if we take that further just a little bit, while we're still on this gender issue, I vehemently believe that the bar for women empowerment needs to be transformed dramatically in biodiversity conservation. And I slipped this in last night, so I will have to stand here to read my text a bit. Think about it. If you think about protected areas, where do we see African women typically? On the side of the road, weaving baskets next to the protected area. And next to that is typically a high-end ecotourism destination where you and me are going to experience a lovely night stay. Now, women empowerment for Indigenous Black women in conservation is typically that, right? Giving some women some resources to be able to basket weave against the backdrop of these highly exclusive protected areas. Now, think about women empowerment in your own work environment. I work in a university. Women empowerment is making sure that women occupy positions of power. Women empowerment means getting more professors, female professors within strategic committees. That's what women empowerment looks like in my field. And yet conservation typically packages women empowerment for Indigenous women as basket weaving. And I don't think basket weaving in and of itself is bad. It can, of course, create some revenue for women. But my argument here is that I think the bar for what women empowerment for Indigenous women and Black women needs to be raised. And I say that because if you go on conservation organization websites and look at how white women are typically featured, the story is completely different. We're seeing people with rhino, with leopard, doing what is typically seen as the hard conservation work. So I did say it's going to be a bit uncomfortable because I think to skirt around these issues also does not do justice to the kind of world and the kind of sort of sustainable development goals that we're moving towards. Now, if these systemic issues are not addressed, conservation initiatives will stay within the discourse of job creation, right? We see this a lot on websites. We are creating jobs. And I think that's not good enough. We need to think about what are these types of jobs that people are actually doing in conservation? What is the pay that they're getting? What is the kind of housing that they're getting within protected areas? And again, read within the context of the fact that biodiversity is incredibly important for our time in relation to climate change, extinction, and all those pressing issues. So we need to think about these people that do the heavy lifting, the mending the fence, making sure that every day all the rhinos are still within the private owner's land. We need to think about the people that will come in the morning and shake your bed, make sure that it's pretty for you when you come back from your safari tours. And these workers need a concerted effort to address racism in the sector. Conservation workers, because they're at the forefront of this key strategic sector, they need to see this differential value in life addressed expeditiously. And women need better, more, I think, rewarding opportunities in conservation beyond basket weaving. So what am I doing about this, you may ask? Not a lot, but I'll speak to it in a bit. So in South Africa, I am part of a project called the Living Landscapes in Action Project, and we do a lot of things in the project, but I won't speak to them because today I'm speaking about labor. I'll focus on what we've been doing with conservation workers. In the past 3 years in South Africa, we've been running a course for conservation practitioners, so not researchers, not students, just people on the ground, rangers, activists, different people working in government departments within the Ministry of Environment and the like. And we've been running this course for about 3 years now, and we've had people or practitioners from over 10 African countries. And none of us in the teaching staff are ecologists, we're all social scientists. But what we do with this course is to try and start speaking about the sort of the socio-economic challenges inherent in conservation, to sensitize conservation practitioners about the inequalities that they work in. And a lot of feedback that we get from practitioners is that we simply do not feel valued in our work. And this is mainly from conservation practitioners who work on the ground in the field protecting wildlife. So that is it from me. Yeah, I'm done talking.
Thank you so much, Dr. Takoli. So, I see some tired faces over here, so I think we have to get into action again and start our discussion over here. So I will join you at the panel for the start before I can start running around here. I hope you all, oh yeah, thank you very much. That's kind. I hope you're all ready for the discussion. I hope you got some sharp questions for our panelists over here. I already see them waiting. But let's kickstart here this conversation at the panel. Dr. Fischler, from the European Forum Alpbach as an interdisciplinary platform that brings together many different groups of people like policymakers, scientists, young people, many of those actors that Anja actually was also referring to today. But there's always the question of the political leadership too. So given your experience actually in political leadership and policy making, what would you say are such kind of key strategies that governments should prioritize to address those interconnected challenges that we heard about today, given climate change, deforestation, biodiversity that we heard now, and also food system transformations? Where would you see the most pressing issues? Yeah, I know. Actually, I have a high level panel here, so you can come up with the tricky ones.
Therefore, you think you can put very simple
Sure.
questions. No, the most interesting questions usually are the simple questions. Yeah? When you mentioned the European Forum Alpbach, yeah, the European Forum Alpbach is an informal platform, yeah, where scientists, entrepreneurs, politicians, and so on come together and discuss certain topics. I think that this way of decision-making should be advanced and should become part of the public sector. In the public sector, I think we need also formal platforms where these different parts of the society come together and work together on a solution. What we have now in most of the countries is that finally only the politicians are deciding. They are, if they wish to do so, listening in the form of hearings what the science has to say on these things. And the entrepreneurs and the economic sector plays its own role. And I think, as I mentioned also in my introduction, it is impossible that you get really good solutions if you continue with these procedures. So therefore, I think what we need are procedural changes. I must say the biggest problems are here usually at the national level. At the European level, the policy making and the decision making is more led by science than at the national level. but it is also not good enough. In addition to that, we have a lack of strategy. If you think that at the European Commission level, there's no whatsoever strategic unit dealing with the future, preparing future prospects, deal with impact studies, and so on and so forth. When I came to Brussels in 1995, I found this an impossible situation, but the Directorate General for Agriculture was the only one who had 10 people for strategic planning. When I left Brussels 10 years later, my strategic unit had 80 collaborators. And I think here, I really don't understand why in the last period of the European Commission, the strategic planning was totally given up. They don't have a strategic unit anymore. So can you imagine what that means? And I can only hope that the next Commission will do its learnings from this last period and will reintroduce a strategic unit as, for example, the predecessor of Mrs. von der Leyen, Mr. Juncker. He had a big strategic unit. So this is one thing, yeah. But there are also the other thing is you need platforms for discussions, for open discussions, yeah. And you should be really careful with the selection of the members of such platforms, so that there's the risk. That there's no risk or almost no risk that these platforms are one-sided. And in addition to all this, it seems to me that we should use more also the modern communication tools which are available in the meantime, and which would allow also to immediately contact at an international level, at a global level, and to discuss also at the global level. These are maybe a few elements which I see important.
Thank you. Dr. Kastner, informality or informal platforms as a way of interacting. C4E-Craft works also closely with governments, civil society and private sector. How are you ensuring actually that those collaborations lead to sustainable and scalable solutions? So here we are more on the strategy policy level, and then always the question is, how do we land that on the ground actually? What are your experiences on that?
Thank you for the question. I would probably say we don't really assure those. I would say what we're trying to do is to stay in communication. So as C4E-Craft, and that's most of the CGIAR centers work that way. We have offices within the regions and in the countries where we work. So when we say we are on the ground, it actually means that the country teams and our country directors are people that have grown up in those landscapes. They have their peers are sitting in the parliament, they're sitting in the industry. So we're not just by saying on the ground, there's an office building. People are deeply interwoven in this landscape. I often say that when I introduce our work to people, especially in Europe, what I say is like, we sit in the European sourcing landscapes. Cacao, oil palm, coffee, livestock, anything we consume, this is where we actually implement our projects, and that's the communities and the very people that actually are at the lower level of producing these goods that we see as being our clients. These are the people whose life we want to actually assure. So I think to get the sustained support is I presented the GLF, which is one thing, but it's a constant communication. It's a constant translation of, I think so I don't know. I'm talking while I'm thinking. It's like, you know, to all of you who are actually scientists, that's a difference, I think, about being an academic scientist or to join the applied field. We will not necessarily write, some of us do, but you might not have the time to write the high-cited Nature publications, because you will be in the room with politicians, you will be in the room, and it's not, for us decision makers would not necessarily be sort of like just the high level politics people. Who does an everyday decision is your district forest officer, is the agriculture person who sits in the middle ranks, who wants to do good but doesn't know how, and he also only has an 8-hour day. So I think it's just seeing who you can talk to and translate the knowledge that you have in a way that somebody can understand you. So to all of you, my best sort of like mirroring board is my mother. If I manage to convince my mom, then I think I'm doing good.
That's a good benchmarking, huh? Convincing your mom. Dr. Zakoli, I was very inspired and intrigued by your lecture and your presentation. And actually you addressed to, what I really found very interesting is that you addressed those systemic injustices, racism, gender issues. So I was wondering, just mentioning a few of those, and you're actually working in this field of environmental sustainability and human rights. What you think is really crucial, actually, that we can spur those debates, but also how we're actually addressing those debates to come closer to those societal transformations. I mean, here we're now going towards fundamental questions. Another small question, yeah.
Very small question. So how can we come closer towards some of these societal transformation and transforming these very inherent issues? I think this conversation alone is already a start at that. I think it's, I come from the social sciences, so it's typical that we have these conversations. And in that space, one can assume that, oh, this is happening in every space. But I don't think that's necessarily the case, at least with my work with conservation practitioners. So I think as a very small sort of step towards transformation is to start thinking about having these conversations, creating spaces where different forms of people who are marginalized, whether it's workers, whether it's indigenous communities in relation to land, whether it's women not feeling expressed in whatever setting. I think the key thing is to create a space where people can talk about some of these issues. And then from there, thinking about, you know, as experts on the topic, what is my role? Am I a facilitator? Am I the person who's going to speak on behalf of? Am I going to be the person that just creates the space for people to air their issues and create solutions for themselves? So in that regard, I really do think as a very small, you can do it tomorrow nugget is to create dialogue and to have uncomfortable conversations, right? I think racism is not comfortable for anybody. I think it, you know, it raises, you know, a very, uncomfortable feelings that can, I think, feel alienating more than connecting. But I think creating a space where the uncomfortable can be aired out is definitely a start towards dealing with the systemic issues. And then beyond that, at a very practical level, tomorrow, every private conservation owner in South Africa can maybe pay their workers more. That does not require government intervention, right? That requires people just saying, I'm actually going to pay my workers better. So I think in that regard, also recognizing spaces of possibility and the low-hanging fruit. And I think there are many low-hanging fruits and people in positions of influence that can start picking on those.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the audience. There are questions over there. Can you help me with the microphone? Questions over there. There is one gentleman, lady over there. Maybe on the top. We start with the gentleman, then the lady on the top there. Maybe you can briefly introduce and then pose your question. There. Questions, no speeches was the. Yeah, no co-presentations here. Okay, who is Where's the first question? Gentleman over there? Yeah, shoot. Is it working? Then let's try the other one. We need some technical support here. Let's try over there.
Hello.
Yeah, sounds good. Go ahead, lady.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. My name is Clay Chagwiza, and I work with Future Africa, University of Pretoria. So I have a question for Dr. Lerato. I really enjoyed your presentation. So I wanted to ask, like, do you also look into the issue of migrant laborers? Because I know there are like so many, say for example, from Zimbabwe, from Malawi, from Zambia, who are also working in those, you know, national parks. So I was just interested to know if you're also looking into that issue, since today you are talking about uncomfortable issues, and that is one for me as well. Thank you.
Should I address it? Yeah, sure. I do look at migrant labor issues. Part of my work is also located in the north of South Africa, bordering Zimbabwe and Botswana. So there's a plethora of undocumented migrant workers working in that space. It's also an area with a lot of conservation, but also commercial agriculture. So I think that's why this push towards landscapes is so important, right? Conservation is just one sector in a landscape with a whole host of other land uses as well. So in that sense, I look at migrant workers in relation to the kind of possibilities of exploitation that being undocumented creates for migrant workers, right? I think, you know, it's one thing to exploit conservation workers. If you start hearing the stories of undocumented workers, it becomes increasingly even more uncomfortable. But that's also an issue, I think, that's not foreign to Europe either, right? If we look at the south of Spain, with the greenhouses there, we look at a lot of workers who find themselves in very exploitative relations in the Netherlands as well, not to forget where I come from by proxy of working there. I come from South Africa. But I think, yeah, migrant labor issues are incredibly important in conservation. And there's also a history there, right? South Africa has been receiving a lot of migrant workers, not just recently, but also historically. And we see that typically that bracket of worker experiences a lot more exploitation than if you are a South African citizen, for instance, knowing how the procedures of justice work. Yeah.
Thank you. Question over there.
Okay, thank you. My name is Custodio. I'm from the Leibniz Institute for Agriculture Engineering and Bioeconomy in Germany. My question is directed to Dr. Lerato as well, because you mentioned about the gender roles aspect. I wonder how is it related to cultural, like because you're talking about indigenous communities. So I would assume that it's also related to how the gender roles are kind of developed within the local and indigenous people. So how is it? Wow. Okay. To what extent this is really rooted to the systemic problems related to conservation and not exactly the cultural norms? And if you have looked at it, how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's an incredibly important question. So of course, in the interest of time, you always try and fit everything that you can in that 15 minutes. But I always read conservation as a microcosm of society, right? I don't think conservation is divorced from sort of the systemic issues within a society. And I work within this space because conservation, I think, often gets a clean sheet or a green sheet, if we would call it that, right? Job creation, saving nature, those are very nice ideals that many people, many governments can get behind. But mining, conservation, manufacturing, those sectors also represent the societies that we live in. And with this talk, what I wanted to argue is that conservation is not divorced from sort of these systemic issues that are inherent in society, including gendered roles that might be cultural as well. So in addressing the issues of gender division of labor in conservation would also require a more systematic approach in having these conversations in broader society. But with that said, I don't want to absolve conservation conversation because then it's like, oh, it's not us, right? It's the government, it's society. No, these changes can also be done within the sector as well. It could be done through, for instance, creating employment opportunities that don't require Indigenous women to sit out in the sun selling necklaces and beads the whole day. It could come very strategically, making sure that the work of environmental monitors is also giving to women or gender non-conforming people for that matter. So in that sense, conservation is a microcosm of broader society, and that's what I was trying to highlight here. Yeah.
Thank you. Further questions? Question over here, and then I also question over here, lady over there. I see ladies in the back. Can you? Yeah, just start, just to keep in mind, please.
Okay. Good morning, afternoon, actually. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Priscilla Claes. I'm a researcher, professor at Coventry University, Center for Agroecology, Water and Resilience. Thank you for a very exciting conference and opening panel. This is a question for Dr. Anja Gassner. I'm trying to address questions to other panelists as well. You're basically promoting agroforestry, right? And I think as a research center, we're also very much advocating for agroecology and agroforestry. However, I'm a bit worried to hear planting trees promoted as a kind of one-size-fits-all solution. We had a really interesting discussion this morning focusing on the role of pastoralism in conservation and how pastoralism is a really viable livelihood option in drylands and grazing areas. So I would be curious to hear what your center is doing in areas where tree planting is actually not appropriate. And I was part of a review for the last IPCC report on land where we identified actually quite a bit of evidence on the negative impacts of planting trees where we shouldn't be planting trees. So I would be curious to hear any thoughts on that. Thank you.
Super question. Thank you very much. In a nutshell, I would say we just said, have the conversation of saying that trees are not part of the solution there. So we as a center, we have a slogan, which is like the right tree for the right people for the right place. And we would definitely, I mean, I'm surprised we do not work with you already, would definitely always support saying that it's not about trees everywhere. One thing, trees belong in ecosystems. We're looking at restoration of forested landscapes and bringing trees back into landscape where they used to be. That's one thing. Trees are not everywhere solution because also agroforestry systems are not just only from an agroecological point, but also agroforestry solutions are very labor intensive and also knowledge intensive. And you do have communities where one has to be very careful whether you want to actually have these people integrating very technical integrated agroforestry. Like I'm looking at like shaded cacao and coffee systems are not simple systems. So it could also be that it's a wrong community to come with a very, very technology intensive and labor intensive system. But also, so what we do for drylands is so where there is an opportunity, we particularly supporting like farmers' natural regeneration in drylands. So I think that's where we overlap a lot with the pastoralist area, because that's where we do not have intensive cropping system and you still have sufficient seed stocks within the soil. And promoting is wrong. Promoting with the donors, I would say. I keep on looking at into Alexander because he sits also in my line. That there are ways of supporting indigenous knowledge, indigenous practice, which will then see the ecosystems to come back. And farmers' natural regeneration practices will work in some areas and quite a lot in pastoralist areas. But also coming back to just what you just said about agroecology, I mean, we see agroforestry as a circular way of farming, because when you bring the trees back, you mimic the natural processes that the forest used to have. It's the nutrient processes as well as the water processes. So we do very much see agroforestry as an agroecological practice.
Satisfied? All right, lucky us. I'm just looking at the time. Andreas, am I allowed one more question? Last one. I'm terribly sorry. I have one last question already promised it over there. Please.
All right, thank you very much. Lucky me.
Lucky you.
Yeah, so my question is about the presentation about the conservation and the wage disparity. Sorry, my name is Charles. I'm in the Sustainable Agroecosystems Group, ATH Surrey. So I'm a postdoctoral researcher there. So my question is, if you are actively involved in the government policy institutions to actually give some policy backend to it, because the risk of having some conservation employees giving like good wages to their employees and others not giving is that it might also not be fully enforced if it doesn't have any policy backing. So my question is, do you engage the policy institutions in the work that you do?
Yeah, I do engage policy institutions. I've gone to the Department of Environment, but also the Department of Labor, because I think these issues are overlapping. Department of Agriculture as well is quite key in conservation in many countries, because believe it or not, some wild animals are still classified as livestock, right? So we do try to engage government departments through the project that I mentioned, the Living Landscapes in Action project. We've been doing what we call campaign runs with government departments at a local level, but also at a national level, having these deeply uncomfortable conversation. And I must say, the kind of reception that we received in South Africa at this stage has been incredible, in the sense that a lot of government officials also recognize that there is an issue, but typically people feel stuck within the role that they have to perform within government, right? So in that sense, I think, of course, it's important that policy changes happen to create a benchmark for what is a living wage for conservation labor. But again, I also want to move away from always waiting on governments, because then it typically absolves sectors from changing. That's why I said, you know, a conservation or a manager of a conservation reserve can literally tomorrow pay workers better. And I think that is within the power of private sector, not government per se.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have to, I'm terribly sorry. I'm super sorry. I have to actually postpone you to the coffee break afterwards. So actually, I think it was the kickstart for the coffee break conversations that we have later onwards, and you're spot on for later. The difficulty with panel discussions is always how to do the final round. And over some time, I ask you for very brief answers. And we always try actually to avoid standard answers for the last round. So we have a little surprise. And everybody can draw one card and pick your final question with a very short answer, please. What gave you energy today, Dr. Fischler?
Well, maybe I should answer the question in the opposite way. What didn't me give energy today, especially the climate here in this room?
And the lights, I agree.
Because it seems that Boku tried to simulate a tropical zone. But to be positive, what gave me energy is, first of all, when I look into this audience and see many ambitious young people here, promising people, I think this gives hope, and this makes us stronger. And in this context, I would like to mention one small thing, because it was said that women empowerment is so important. I fully agree that women empowerment is important, but then we must be also more consequent about the conditions for women in the tropical areas, because it seems to me that very often all new things are added to the women, and they should they are confronted with a increasing workload. So if we are serious about women empowerment, then we must also find ways how we can decrease the workload for women.
Great.
Only then we can be successful.
Great answer. Thank you so much. Take your chances.
Okay. It worries me that, oh, that's a difficult question for me because I'm a very optimistic person and I try not to be worried a lot. But what actually, so I would rephrase it. Your talk actually reflected for me that one, I think, uncomfortable truth is this conservation in general is a very male-dominated field. And I never thought about that it actually triggers down all the way. That was new, but it's even amongst our peers. It is not very easy to recruit a female ecologist with a standing expertise in the field. So coming back to the donor would be the question, what can the donor society do to, from their type, to support universities and governments to actually bring females and girls into their profession?
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. What will I do better tomorrow? Okay. Oh, this is a very hard one.
I'm sorry.
How
I
do I
apologize.
answer that?
You want another one?
Is that cheating?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
It's female solidarity.
Yes,
You're
I
allowed to
appreciate
cheat.
that.
Well,
Okay, what would you like to discuss if you had an additional hour? Oh my God, I can go on about conservation workers. Like I have a lot more material that I could share. I could also talk about land politics on the African continent. I can also talk about border issues, which were highlighted earlier. So, I mean, I have many things that I would love to talk about. So thank you.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think this is a great start for later. Thank you very much to the panel. Andreas, I think this is your turn now. Thank you very much, actually, for your keynote lecture. Thank you very much for joining us on the panel, engaging with you. I'm sure there are plenty of more questions. Keep them. Approach our speakers in the coffee break. Ruin the coffee break. And use the opportunity. Thank you once more. Big applause. And and now I would like to hand over to Dr. Andrea Fadani. Hello, nice to see you. Welcome at Boku University. Let's wait 1 second until you see there's a bit of activities. I think you can, if you want to move and if you want to sit in, it's also okay. Yeah, we're changing the microphone for you. Yeah, he's taking that one. All right. And it's not the coffee break yet. I feel like in my lectures. Coffee break is a little bit later. No. So, there. Can we continue? I feel like in my lectures, really. Yeah. No, it's super hot in here, actually. Yeah. So.
Can you?
Yeah, I think so too.
Sorry.
I'm pretty sure they're coming back.
Perfect.
So I would like to welcome Dr. Andrea Fadani, I'm sorry.
No problem.
He will introduce the Hans Rutenberg Award and the Hermann Eiselen Science Awards 2024. It's great to have you here, and I'm handing over to you.
Thank you. Great pleasure. It's the 26th time that we are joining the Tropentag. Since 1999, the Iceland Foundation and later on the Foundation Fiat Panis are supporting high qualified young graduates by honoring excellent master thesis in the field of food security with the Hans Hartwig Rutenberg Graduate Award. The founder of our foundation, Dr. Hermann Iserland, believed that development-oriented scientific research can have a great impact to the improvement of countries with food deficits. And the other statement Dr. Iserland always told me is that he was convinced that only a world without hunger will be a peaceful world. The name of Hans Hartwig Rutenberg is closely linked with the early years of international-oriented agriculture research. He worked at the University of Berlin, at the University of Göttingen, and finally at the University of Hohenheim. Several years ago, the institutes related to the tropical agriculture at the University of Hohenheim merged together and formed the so-called Hans Hartwig Rutenberg Institute to honor the late Hans Hartwig Rutenberg. For the Rutenberg Award, all persons can apply which study at the universities in Europe and gradually successfully with a university master degree. An independent scientific jury decides on the award. Let me thank the jury, which was consisted of Professor Johanna Jacobi of the ETH at Zurich, Professor Ulrike Grote, University of Hannover, and Professor Jochen Reif, University of Halle, for their intensive work to select the most successful works for this year. The prize is awarded with the total amount of €7,500, which is normally divided among the 3 prize winners. This year we have 2 winners who will now present their scientific work, which will be followed by the assessment of the member of the jury, Johanna Jacobi, which also received herself in 2010 the Hans Hartwig Rutenberg Award, and then completed by the handover of the certificate. And here are the 2 winners of the Hans Hartwig Rutenberg Graduate Award. I now invite the first one, Anna Tabea Mergen, for her presentation. Please, Anna.
Should I speak here? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm not an experienced speaker like everybody else so far. I hope you can still enjoy it. I'm very honored to be able to present my work about assessing genotype by environment interactions and farmers' preferences in participatory maize selection in eastern Zambia and implications for the breeding process today here. And you'll know that there's a problem about stagnant crop yields in sub-Saharan Africa, which affects livelihoods regarding growing population numbers, and that formal plant breeding has so far had limited successes. And one of the options to actually tackle that problem is participatory plant breeding, which tries to include farmers and consumers in the selection process to actually select right in the target environment and for specific target groups. This process is also known to speed up variety adoption and also often has implications of social impact and empowerment for marginalized groups. And what also is important in this context is that we want to extend the traditional genotype by environment context and genotype by environment interaction concept to the options by context concept, which means farmers have options, which is still genotypes here. But we do not only see the environment as the biophysical environment, but also as the social and economical environment that farmers and consumers of the crops actually live in. And in this context, performance does not only mean yield, but could also mean nutrition purposes or some other use purposes that people could have for the plants. And this is where the project comes in, the participatory breeding project Seeds for Zambian Incomes and Livelihoods, which is a participatory breeding project in Eastern Zambia, which aims to support Zambian smallholder farmers to produce according to their needs, thereby enhancing food security, incomes, and livelihoods. And my 3 objectives for the thesis were to investigate and understand the diversity of local farmers' cultivar preferences based on their context, and then to assess the effect of genotype-bioenvironment interaction and differences in different trial methods, so on-farm and on-station trials, and then in the end to derive some recommendations for participatory maize breeding in the area and beyond. So what did we do? There were 10 on-farm trials in farmers' fields in Eastern Zambia, testing 23 maize varieties, and every farmer, there were men and women farmers, would manage the trial just as they would usually do with all the rest of their fields. And then there were additionally 2 on-station trials with varying nitrogen levels. And then during the season, each individual farmer scored a range of traits regarding their plants on a scale from 1 to 5. And then one of the most important questions was, would you like to test this variety again next year, which we call global appreciation of variety. And then, of course, yield was also assessed. And then there were also group scorings where farmers from the surrounding areas were invited to the trials to have a look at the plants shortly before the end of the season and score the plants to their liking. And then this was evaluated using mixed models and AMI analysis. So what did we find? We found that farmers still do appreciate yield. That is very important, and also what farmers perceive as yield, so crop size and crop number. But we also found that many farmers also value grain characteristics and agronomic characteristics like resistance to lodging, pest and disease resistance. What we found was that drought tolerance and early lodging was way less important than we thought it would be. And we also saw that individual farmers scored not exactly the same ranking as the farmer groups would do. And then we also saw that male and female farmer groups scored rather similarly. So regarding these different traits that farmers valued, we found that despite the yield ranking between the locations being rather similarly, the appreciation ratings were not the same. So farmers rated different factors differently. And then we asked, why is that? And we tried to find that out by trying to dissect the genotype environment effect using principal component analysis, so in an AMI analysis. And we found that the GEI effect for the appreciation for variety was rather big, so about 30%. And then when we were correlating that with the principal components, looking at all the different factors that we knew about of the farmers, we found that that is tied to a range of different factors like soil type, farmer age, fertilization, so a range of management factors, social factors, a lot of things. And then when we did the same for yield, the GEI effect is quite lower here, but we still see a lot of factors tied to that, so even social factors like farmer age and gender. And this means there's no clear trend. You can't really map that variation down to 1 or 2 simple factors like gender, as it is sometimes assumed. So here that did clearly not work. And probably there's a very much more complex connection between the social and the biophysical factors. And then the last aspect is that we had on-farm and on-station trials, and you can see here the grain yield of the trials. In blue are the on-station trials, which have way higher yield than the on-farm trials, which you can see in red. So the on-station trials cannot depict realistic yield levels that you would see in field at farmers' fields. And we also saw that the variance in the on-station trials is bigger. And then another important factor was that the correlation between, so regarding yield and appreciation, the rankings between on-stage, the correlation between rankings between any on-station trial and on-farm trials was always higher than between different on-farm trials. So this means that probably the overall better trial conditions in the on-station trials allowed detecting more pronounced differences between the varieties. So what can we take from this? So first of all this evaluation is based on the first year data from the project. So we would need multi-year trials to actually validate all what we found now. But then we also saw that all of the farmers in the trials, in the experiments, found some varieties that they were very content with. So from that, we concluded that having a baseline maize breeding program for that specific area would probably be enough to at least satiate a lot of needs of the people there. And then when it comes to defining new specific production targets or new breeding targets for specific marginalized groups, we cannot just define them by simple factors like gender, but that would probably have to be done more according to status groups and in a very intersectional way. When it comes to planning what kind of trials you want to do, like on farm or on station, you have to see that for now, at least in this area, they fulfill different purposes. So you have to think about, do we actually want to have it in farmers' fields, see what yield would be there? Or do we want to be able to differentiate between varieties? Also, if we want to move all trials on farm in the future, then probably something has to be done about the experimental precision in on-farm trials. And then last but not least, the mode of participation matters. So it doesn't make a difference if you have one farmer or a few farmers scoring a variety throughout the whole season, also regarding what inputs they put in related to what they get out of it, or if you send a group of farmers, which would create more participation, but just at one certain point of the season. So when you plan a project, you would have to think about which of these aspects would be more important for what we want to see in the end in the results. And then, not mentioned yet, but of course, this specific analysis only focus on the production period, but of course, what kind of product is the outcome in the end is also very important, how people appreciate that one. And then also maize is subject to a lot of governmental subsidies and programs in Zambia, and that will also always affect what people actually buy in the end or what people would actually choose in the end. So we always have to keep that in mind too. So finally, these are a lot of aspects which can give a foundation to be picked up in further research and in planning of breeding programs, and will help the design of future participatory breeding programs in that area or maybe also beyond, which will then help to strengthen the food security in these areas as farmers will be more able to produce according to their needs. So finally, thank you for your attention. And I also have to thank, immense thanks to the amazing on-the-ground team who did at Good Nature Agro, which is a Zambian seed company, who did all the actual data gathering that I evaluated. And then many thanks to Professor Dr. Bettina Hausmann, who gave me the opportunity to pursue this thesis in the first place. Also thanks to Wilma Leiser and Nathalie Aubusson, and also Professor Pifo for lots of advice. This project is co-funded, the ZESL project itself is co-funded by KWS and the BMZ, and Kusanuswerk funded my stay in Zambia. Thank you very much.
Want a handheld?
Yeah.
You want a handheld?
No, but if not, it's fine.
Down there? To be down there? The handheld? It's here. The handheld is here. The handheld device. Is auch ein normales Printing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Before I start with my presentation, I would like you to think about how many of you started your day with a cup of coffee. And now consider this. Every single day, 2.3 billion cups of coffee are consumed worldwide. But as climate change threatens coffee production and coffee farms, how can we ensure that this global commodity and the livelihoods behind it are protected for the future? My name is Paloma Costa, and today I will be sharing with you the insights from my master thesis on the role of climate smart and circular practices for coffee farming in Antioquia and Caldas, Colombia. Okay, so coffee has become one of the most valuable agricultural commodities worldwide, with a production that reached over 10 million tons in 2022. And here you can see the 5 main country producing of coffee, and together they account for 70% of the coffee global production. From South America, Colombia is the second biggest player with a 7% of the global market share, which in turn means that over 500,000 families depend on coffee for their livelihoods, and from which 96% are smallholder farmers. However, Colombia is highly vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And as you can see here, the temperatures have been rising exponentially, especially over the last decade. And when we look ahead, they are expected to keep increasing, which will further intensify the challenges that the coffee industry is already facing, such as altered precipitation patterns, more pests and diseases, and unpredictable temperature fluctuations. So if we continue doing business as usual, by 2050, the number of regions that are most highly suited for growing coffee is expected to decline by 50%. Therefore, this will threaten the farmers' economic stability, and of course, it will aggravate the challenges for food security. So this is why there is an urgent need to implement adaptation strategies so that growing coffee can be sustainable over time. And this is where my research comes in, as the main objectives were to first identify which practices were being implemented in the regions of Caldas and Antioquia that could contribute to the adaptation and mitigation of the challenges posed by climate change. And then, once these practices were identified, I wanted to assess the farmers' economic impact of adopting these practices. So I know that I've been talking a lot about practices, but what do I mean exactly by this? So within my research, I identified two main categories. The first one is linked to the production phase of the coffee value chain. And the production phase starts with the land preparation and goes all the way until the coffee bean is harvested. And then the second category of the practices is linked to the processing phase. And here we talk more about circular practices or circular technologies within the circular economy framework. And here the aim is to either minimize waste or maximize resource efficiency. Whereas in the CSA practices, the main objectives are first, to increase productivity and incomes from the farmers. Second, to adapt to climate change. And third, reducing or mitigating the greenhouse gases emissions where possible. So for the first approach, for the production phase, some of the main common CSA practices within the Colombian coffee sector can be shading systems, the use of organic fertilizers and pesticides, and the use of varieties that are resistant to pests and diseases. And for the processing phase, some of the common technologies that are being used is, for example, the STAM. The STAM is a system to treat the wastewater that results from washing the coffee and that has like a very high contaminant load. Or another example can be the biodigester, which is a technology that uses agricultural residues with the manure from livestock to convert it to biogas through anaerobic combustion. So in order to assess the adoption of these practices, I conducted field work in Colombia for over 6 weeks in the two main coffee producing regions of Antioquia and Caldas. And within my research, within my strategy for the research, I conducted a total of 157 surveys to farmers. This was like the quantitative aspect. And I also incorporated some qualitative instruments to gather a more comprehensive insight from the farmer's perspective. So once the data was collected, I moved on to analyzing the data. And here, to do this, I use a two-stage estimation model. So I'm not going to go into detail here. But basically, it consists of a first stage where I use a multinomial logistic regression to estimate the factors or to estimate the likelihood that a farmer will adopt a specific set of practices given its characteristics. And then, so this is what you can see in equations 1 and 2. The first equation is for the farmers that adopt at least one practice. The second equation is for the farmers that
didn't adopt any of the practices, so the non-adopters. And then I use these likelihoods from the first stage, and I include them in the second stage to account for selection bias problems. And here in the second stage, I use a maximum likelihood estimation method to measure the impact of adopting these practices on the farmer's coffee income. And this is what we have in the last equation. Here I had to do I had to transform the coffee income variable using a natural logarithm function in order to normalize the data and stabilize the variance. And before running the model, it was also necessary to do dimensionality reduction to exclude the bundles or the set of practices with very few observations, as this could lead to decreased accuracy or unstable estimators. So at the end, I selected these four bundles. The first one, the non-adopters, so the ones without any kind of practice. The bundle number 2, which are the farmers that only had a stamp in place. Then bundle 7 are the ones that practice permanent and temporary shade at the production stage. And bundle 9 are the ones who practice permanent and temporary shade and that they also have a stamp in place. So here we can see the results from the second stage of the model. And what we can see is that bundle 2 and bundle 9 resulted positive and statistically significant with a 5% confidence level, which means that by adopting bundles 9 or 2, which are the ones that included a stamp, this is linked with an increase of 5.5% on the log transform coffee income. And then from the other factors that I consider, agricultural membership was the other one significant, which means that being part of one of these organizations is linked to a 7% increase on the log transform coffee income, and which can insinuate that being part of one of these organizations can provide access to either improve resources, information, or market opportunities. And so here I try to summarize the main implications of my study. The first one is that there's already like a lot of research on CSA practices at the production level of coffee, but further research is still needed in the processing technologies or the circular technologies for the processing stage of coffee. Here the research is limited, and this presents a very big opportunity to further study technologies that can fit within the coffee processing stage. Second, for practitioners, there's definitely a pressing need to adopt sustainable practices at both stages, production and processing stage, that like through adopting innovative approaches that reduce environmental impact, enhance economic outcomes for coffee producers, and contribute to food security. Then this research also acknowledged the financial and informational barriers that may prevent coffee farmers from adopting these practices. So these are policymakers should consider these barriers into account when designing strategies that aim to support coffee farmers. And the last one is that priority should be given to practices or technologies that exhibit a favorable cost efficiency ratio to ensure that these sustainable initiatives are both economically feasible and environmentally responsible. And here also one of the findings is that the biodigester is a very good technology that should be further studied, because there are still not too many biodigesters in the coffee processing stage, but they have a very good potential to contribute to this. And yep, thank you very much.
Kommen wir noch mal die erste Präsentation. Nehmen Sie Mikrofon. Übergabe der Urkunden.
which is really special. Oh, thank you. I would start with Ms. Anna Tabea-Mengen. So Anna Tabea-Mengen from Viersen in Germany wanted to study something useful related to biology. She then pursued a bachelor's degree in agricultural biology at the University of Hohenheim, where she was fascinated by the interdisciplinary nature of agricultural sciences and its importance for humanity and the planet. In her bachelor's thesis, she worked on the effects of seed priming on the salinity tolerance of rice seedlings, and that sparked her interest in tropical agriculture. And due to her interest in plants, she chose a master's degree in crop sciences with a major in plant breeding, again at the University of Hohenheim. And besides the breeding aspects, she wanted to broaden her horizon, and also she took courses related to tropical agriculture, for example, natural resource management and policy analysis, and did then a semester abroad at the Swedish University of Agriculture. And that shaped her enthusiasm for interdisciplinary work and international collaboration. And therefore, then she did this master thesis in the field of participatory plant breeding. And this happened in a project in Eastern Zambia about where she could really deepen her skills in data analysis and to work on the ground in on-the-ground project management. And Ms. Mengen's results really provide a foundation for ongoing trials, as we've heard, in the project and the development of a participatory maize breeding program. Furthermore, we thought her thesis has implications for plant breeding in general and is therefore a valuable contribution to development-oriented scientific research in the field of plant breeding. Since the thesis results and recommendations also directly inform the KWS breeding program for East and Southern Africa, it also influences the way in which the Zambian partner company addresses smallholder farmers' needs. Ms. Mengen's master thesis is a direct and lasting contribution for food security in the region. Breeding resilient crops is a key building block for the agriculture of the future. And in addition to yield, many other traits play also an important role in farmer acceptance. Participatory plant breeding is an alternative approach that involves farmers in the breeding process to ensure that their needs are considered. With her work, Ms. Anna Tabea-Mengen has made an important contribution to improving participatory plant breeding using the example of maize in Zambia. Her outstanding work has contributed to a deeper understanding of smallholder farmer selection criteria for better maize varieties and for the interactions of genotype performance with the environment, including managed field trials, but also farmers' fields. And that paves the way for an improved breeding and widespread adoption of resilient varieties that meet the needs of smallholder farmers. For Ms. Acosta Rivera, we wrote the following. Paloma Acosta Rivera from Colombia started her academic journey with a Bachelor of Science in Economics at the Universidad de los Andes in Bogotá. At her first work as an investment analyst in Bogotá, she created financial models and developed strategies for climate change adaptation and mitigation. And there, she realized the immense potential and importance of sustainability, which motivated her to shift her career focus. So she came to Germany to study for a Master of Science in Sustainable Resource Management at the Technical University of Munich, with a focus on sustainable entrepreneurship and climate change economics. And during that time, she worked on two projects. The first project involved collecting data in rural areas of Peru to conduct a study to understand the relevance of electricity on entrepreneurial activities. And the second project, her master's thesis, required field research in the coffee regions of Colombia to understand the economic impact of adopting sustainable coffee practices at the farm level. So while studying, she participated in two exchange programs at the University of Mannheim in Germany and the Universidad Politécnica de Madrid in Spain, which gave her an international perspective and also broadened her horizons. And that exposure was critical to her understanding the global dimensions of sustainability challenges. In addition to her study, she volunteered as an academic tutor for Foundation Bogotá, which aimed to support the education of children in low-income neighborhoods of the capital of Colombia. In her master thesis, Ms. Acosta Rivera explores the urgent challenges facing the global coffee industry due to the escalating impacts of climate change, with a particular focus on Colombia, which is a key player in South America's coffee production landscape in the world. As climate change threatens coffee cultivation. The imperative of implementing sustainable agricultural practices becomes increasingly clear. And in her master thesis, she examined how the adoption of climate-smart agriculture and circular economy practices can influence coffee farmers in Colombia's Antioquia and Caldas regions. The key findings reveal the important role of integrating permanent and temporary shade with wastewater treatment systems to enhance coffee income. Moreover, the study underscores the necessity for wider implementation and evaluation of innovative processing technologies within the coffee sector, emphasizing the critical need for tailored policy interventions that provide financial resources and institutional support. The master thesis of Ms. Paloma Acosta Rivera has a strong theoretical background. The methods are very solid, and it has a detailed examination of the primary opportunities and obstacles in implementing eco-friendly practices in coffee production. Her thesis presents comprehensive policy recommendations aimed at enhancing sustainability practices in coffee farming. She very well deserves the Rutenberg Graduate Award 2024. Congratulations, felicidades.
Let me hand over the certificates. The Foundation Fiat Panis Ulm, Germany honors Ms. Anna Tabea Mengen with its Hans-Hartwig Rutenberg Graduate Award 2024. The prize winner receives the amount of €2,500 for the submitted work, assessing genotype by environment, interactions, and farmers' preferences in participatory maize selection in eastern Zambia and implication for the breeding process, supervised by Bettina Hausmann at the University of Hohenheim. Ms. Mengen received this award, I quote the jury, for her excellent research showing that participatory plant breeding is an alternative approach that involves farmers in the breeding process to ensure that their needs are considered. She made an important contribution to improving participatory plant breeding in Zambia. Her outstanding work has contributed to a deeper understanding of smallholder farmer selection criteria for better maize varieties and the interaction of genotype performance with the environment, including managed field trials in farmers' fields. This paves the way for an improved breeding and widespread adoption of resilient varieties that meet the needs of smallholder farmers. Ulm, Vienna, September 11, 2024. The director of the Foundation Fiat Panis and the members of jury. Congratulations. Das ist das eine. Wir gehen auf die andere Seite, dann haben wir und das ist noch das Wichtige. There's missing one. Please join us here. The Foundation Fiat Panis Ulm, Germany honors Ms. Paloma Costa Rivera with its Hans-Hartwig Gutenberg Graduate Award 2024 for her submitted work, Climate Smart and Circular Practices for Coffee Farming in Antioquia and Caldas, Colombia, supervised by Dr. Maria Verjoli at the Technical University of Munich. I quote the jury. Ms. Rivera receives this award for her in-depth theoretical and empirical analysis of implementing eco-friendly practices for coffee production in Colombia. Her work shows how the adoption of climate-smart agriculture and circular economy practices can have positive impacts on coffee production. The research work underscores the necessity for wider implementation and evaluation of innovative technologies and the critical need for tailored policy interventions. These measures would make it possible to overcome barriers and thus supporting the resilience of the coffee industry in the face of the climate-related challenges, ensuring its long-term sustainability. Congratulations. Thank you. Let me continue with the Hermann Iserland Science Award 2024. The Foundation Fiat Panis honors scientists whose work focuses on helping to reduce hunger and malnutrition in developing countries. From 1986 to 2009, the Iserland Foundation awarded the Science Award. Since 2010, the Foundation Fiat Panis succeeded with awarding this prize. Since 2022, the Science Award of the Foundation Fiat Panis is named Hermann Iserland Science Award. This will honor our founder, makes his person more visible, and highlight his engagement to promote scientific work in the field of food security. The objective of the award is to encourage scientists to work on research finding which must be user-oriented and suitable to contribute towards improving the status of food and nutrition security. Eligible are individuals and teams whose members have not reached their 40th birthday by the application deadline and who have successfully completed a doctorate at an European university. The award will be issued throughout Europe and it's endowed with the total sum of 30,000 euro. An independent scientific jury decides on the award. And let me thank you, the members of the jury, Professor Eva Schlecht, Professor Matthias Becker, and Professor Dr. Maike Wolny, for their intensive work to select the most successful works for this term. The three award winners will now present, here are the three award winners, will now present their scientific work, which will be followed by the assessment of a member of the jury, Dr. Schlecht, and the handover of the certificates. I think we start with Custodio. Yeah.
Yes, fine. Oh,
sorry.
I don't. Yes, this one. Do I have a microphone?
Here, you have this one here.
Okay, thank you.
Is okay? Or would
It
you like
is,
to have the handheld?
It's fine.
Oh, it's better with this one here.
Okay, this one is better. Oops. How do I switch off this one? Thank you. Well, my name is Custodio Matavel, and I will present the work that I've conducted when I was doing my PhD. And the title is Integrating More Efficient Renewable Energy Technology into Food Systems in Central Mozambique, where I come from. And the idea was to study the implications of this integration, or the integration of these technologies on food and nutrition security. So, as most of us here in the room know, that since 2019, the trend of food, the trend of hunger in the world has been increasing, but this has been more critical in Africa, where, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where 1 out of 5 people faced hunger in 2023. So that means that the state of food security since, or food insecurity, I would say, since 2021 to 2023 is still relatively stable, which is shows that there is no much progress has been observed during this time. And also the implication is that the rates to progress, the rates of progress towards the Sustainable Development Goal 2, which is zero hunger, will need to be increased 3 to 4-fold. So that means we need more efforts to fight against hunger in the world. So one of the key actions that is used to decrease these levels of hunger is to increase the food supply. This is done by increasing agricultural productivity. But also on the other side, there were some implications which has to do with the increased pressure on natural resources. So what we did is to look into is to pay attention at the post-harvest activities. So in rural settings where people use very traditional methods of food preparation and preservation. So this leads to food losses. This leads to harvested food not in safety and good standards condition in terms of safety. So many technologies have been developed to accelerate the progress towards achieving the sustainability of food systems, especially talking about post-harvest activities. But we still do not know what are the clear or the real implications of these technologies on food security. So there is some work, but some look into one specific dimension of food security. So here we try to make an holistic assessment, look at different dimensions of food security. So what we did, we went to a district in central Mozambique, which is called Gurui, where most of people are agricultural based, and it's the food security situation at the time of our study was approximately 50%. And then what we did, we sit down with local communities, and since this is a remote area without access to electricity and with very limited access to energy and also with energy scarcity, so we developed very simple technologies that do not require external source of energy other than the available sources. So this is a passive solar dryer, it's an improved cooking stove, and also a heat retention box, because we wanted to look not just the preservation of harvested food, but how to look at the cooking practices and also how the food is handled after cooking. So what we did, we went to the community in February. We sit down, we did an assessment analysis. We had through a baseline survey, we also talked with local community, and this is how we also, together with the local community, using a participatory approach, we came to the designs of the 3 technologies that I showed there, which might somehow, based on the talks we had, can meet the local needs, I would say. So from June 2020, we started the implementation of technologies with trainings and also assessment of the performance of these technologies. And then we also, from there, started to monitor the effects of these technologies, so using an experimental approach. So what we find out was that if we introduced the cooking stove into the community, the time and also the energy required for cooking is decreasing, which means we're improving the cooking efficiency, and also we are reducing the time required for meal preparation, because the problem is when you have fuel scarcity, local communities tend to, for example, not prepare the type, like nutrient-rich foods that require more soaking, for example, beans, because of food scarcity. So if we can improve the efficiency of the cooking process, probably we will return, or we will have an impact on that. So we did it. So we did some tests using local staple foods. So we also looked at the box that we use, because the idea is that after cooking, food still needs to remain outside what is called temperature danger zone. So which is the temperature danger zone is between 5% and 58, not 5%, 50 Celsius degrees and 55 degrees Celsius and 58 degrees Celsius, which is where the pathogenic microorganisms multiply, and this has implications for disease, for example. So we kind of developed a design of a device that can maintain the heat in the food so that it will be outside the temperature danger zone. So to maintain heat, because there is no conditions for refrigerators for cooling food. So we decided on a simple technology to keep the heat until it's consumed, to kind of avoid this the development of pathogenic microorganisms. So this device was also efficient as compared to the tradition or the local methods that people use for because what's happening is in the community where we intervened, people do not have the habit of let's say heating food before consumption because of the energy scarcity that we mentioned. So also looking at the food security situations, we had, as I said, we used an experimental approach in which we divided, we made intervention in some community and we had some community as control. So when we were monitoring the food security situation, we saw that where communities where adopting these technologies were having higher chances and probabilities of having an increased food security situation. And we use these based on different food security indicators. For example, here food access score, and also the household foods insecurity access scale and others. So what we saw is that the food security situation might indeed increase with the introducing these even the low technology devices, I would say. So also this is kind of the confirmation when we did what's called propensity score matching. So this is called the average treatment. So what we see is that for many food security indicators that we tested, there was an increase the food security, or at least the probability of food security was increased. So the main conclusion is that even in remote communities where access to energy is not, or the access to energy is deficit, there are technologies that we can implement based on locally available forms of energy that can induce changes on food and nutrition security, because we can save the cooking time, we can save the fuel, we can maintain adequate cooking and food storage temperatures, and also we can preserve the food, for example, in the example of the solar dryer, which is designed to preserve food after harvesting. And thank you.
see it go up. Here.
Yep.
So, hello everyone, and it is my pleasure to be here today. And now is the time for you to relax, because that I will not talk about my too much about scientific knowledge, and I just focus on the topic at the connection between my research, PhD research, and the food security, and which is a focus on the rice production system in one case study in the Vietnamese Delta. And the rice is one of the staple food for more than half of the world's population, and it's especially that the rice is very important, and for the countries across the Asia, Latin America, and Africa. And among those countries is mostly the poor and developing country, which is very highly depend on the rice cultivation. And Southeast Asia is Southeast Asia is a region that mostly very highly depend on the rice, with more than 80 calorie per person per day for food calorie derived from rice. And Vietnam is among the countries in the Southeast Asia which we appreciate rice, and rice is one of the most valuable crops in Vietnam. And you can see that rice appears in every single meal in Vietnam, in each Vietnamese family. So that's why it is very important. And rice is not only the food source in Vietnam, but it's also an economic backbone in Vietnam. And more than half of the rice production in Vietnam is come from the Mekong Delta. This is the fertile delta, and this is the most suitable for the agricultural development. And because of the fertile delta, the Vietnam is contribute for the 3 largest exporting rice to the globe. And then the Mekong Delta is earned the name as the rice bowl of the Vietnam, since when we have a boom in the canal development. Just for the development of the canal system in the Vietnam-Mekong Delta, we should going back to the past, since the years of the 1800s. We just have around 130 kilometers of canals. However, but until by 2013, the canal system in the Mekong Delta is reaching over the 15,000 of kilometers. Together with the development, with the significant expanding of the canal system in the Vietnam-Mekong Delta, the rice production system, in Vietnam-Mekong Delta is also increased, and it reaches over 3 million hectares in the Mekong Delta. So that is why the rice in the Mekong Delta is very important. It's not only the food source, but it also can ensure the food security for million people in Vietnam. It seems that the huge expanding of the canal system in the Vietnam-Mekong Delta can only bring the benefits for the Delta. However, it is also open to the major problem in the Vietnam-Mekong Delta is salinity intrusion. During a dry season in Vietnam-Mekong Delta, the salinity the saline water can travel up to 40 to 50 kilometers away from the river mouth. And recently, during a dry season of 2020, we witnessed the very serious drought year in Mekong Delta, and saline water could go further up to 100 kilometers away into inland of the Mekong Delta. And the saltwater intrusion in the Mekong Delta is getting worse because of the climate change in this sea level rise, and also the land subsidence that happened in the Mekong Delta very seriously, and freshwater scarcity in the Mekong Delta has happened more and more during the dry season because of the increase of the number of dams in the upstream of the Mekong River. So to address all of these challenges, our research was conducted to investigate the soil salinity that is in the rice production system. And the aim of our research is to aim at sustaining the agricultural production, and to ensure that the food security in not only in our country but also in the globe. And we conducted the comprehensive field studies that to address the soil salinity is not only from the topsoil but also from the deep soil layer, to to improve our understanding of what is the major causes of salinity. Is it from the inappropriate irrigation of the saline water, or is it from the capillary rise from the saline groundwater? And so the outcome of our research is the detailed map of the salinity in the soil of the top layer and the deep down layers. So I will not go into detail of the result because I don't want to make you to be so tired of that. If you're curious about the scientific knowledge background, and then just please come to me during a coffee break. And so with this detailed maps, we can hope that the local authorities will pay attention. It's not only the topsoil salinity, but into the deep soil salinity, which is very close to the root zone areas. And in the maps that I show you here, that the subsoil salinity is illustrated by the dark blue color. So it means that the salinity from the groundwater is even close around 2 meters. And in the future, with the climate change increasing, then this will will move upward faster. And to ensure the sustainable agriculture, especially for rice production, and it is better not just to manage the water management strategies, but it's also need to have an action as soon as possible, or even immediately, to monitor the saline water under the ground, and to notice that the farmer, there is the potential threat from the saline water under the ground. And so thank you so much for attention. And if you have further questions, please come to me after. Thank you.
Okay, I hope you can hear me well. It's an honor to be here today and to be able to present my research to you. We all know that climate change fundamentally influences agricultural livelihoods, agricultural production, and also food security. Oh, and this is moving without me wanting to move it. And there's a lot of research on this topic, and rightly so. But one aspect that is not so often considered in the climate impact literature is the institutional dimension. So in particular, the institutions that underpin our agricultural livelihoods. And here I'm thinking of land tenure in particular. And I want to illustrate this briefly. Here you can see in a typical landscape in Eastern Africa and Eastern Uganda, on which you can produce food. For example, banana, maybe you would need a lot of different factors, a lot of different things to make that possible. You need land, of course. You would need favorable climatic conditions. And you would also need farmers who are capable and motivated to farm this land and to actually provide you with nutritious and abundant food. But this is, of course, not enough. There are many more things, and there are also many things that are not immediately visible. And this includes institutions such as land tenure rules, which define which rights people have with regard to their land, what they can actually do on the land, are they allowed to plant trees, etc. And in my dissertation, I specifically studied this nexus between land tenure, climate change, and farmers' agricultural production, and also adaptation to climate change. Here you can see two maps which give you an idea of the scale of the challenge that we are facing. You can see in the upper map the level of tenure insecurity in the world based on a recent survey. And you can see that there are a lot of countries which have quite considerable shares of tenure insecurity. And the map at the bottom shows you the level of land documentation by country. And also here you can see considerable variation and especially low levels of land documentation in sub-Saharan Africa. And based on this survey, the best estimate is that almost 1 billion people globally feel tenure insecure. So they're worried that they might lose access to their land, which fundamentally influences how they are farming their land and how they're producing food. Now, in the following, I will focus on the two main results of my dissertation, which are first, that land tenure systems are under threat from climate change and also extreme weather. And then secondly, the relevance of tenure security for agricultural investment decisions is nuanced, so it is highly context dependent. And I will just briefly highlight a few empirical results from my dissertation, mainly focusing on Eastern Africa, to explain to you how I came to these conclusions, how I came to these key results. In the literature, it is well known that land tenure settings shape agricultural investment and that they also shape adaptation. In my dissertation, I extend this classical focus on land tenure, on property rights research, by analyzing in how far climate and weather shocks influence this relationship. And here you can see a snapshot of results from a study that I did on Uganda, where I merged weather data from large-scale weather data sets with a household panel survey. And I studied in how far drought conditions influence the relationship between farming households and their land. And I found, you can see on the left-hand side, a map of Uganda that shows drought conditions and their spatial variation in the year 2010, which was a very severe drought year. And on the right-hand side, you see how these drought conditions influenced the willingness of farming households to formalize their relationship with their land. So their willingness to actually obtain formal ownership rights. And you can see that the drought event considerably decreased this interest. And this is also persistent over time. So even a few years after this drought, this effect still persists. And households who experience such a drought are less interested in obtaining formal land ownership rights. So if you look back on the left side of the slide, you can see that I find a negative influence of climate and weather shocks on land tenure systems. And if we think about what this could mean with regard to these farming livelihoods, we can see that this could potentially pose a risk of a negative feedback loop where these negative impacts could lead to lower investment and lower adaptation, which could then make households even more vulnerable to future climate events and weather shocks. And staying with this framework, I conducted a second empirical study, this time in central Tanzania, again investigating this link. And here, again, using weather data and also household panel data, I found that an increase in weather risks, so dry spells, but also high levels of rainfall variability, they decrease the perceived tenure security of farmers. They increase the incidence of land conflicts. You see a bar chart here on the right, which shows you the different types of land conflicts that are prevalent in this part of Tanzania. And it also influences actually in how far farming households are interested in obtaining formal land certificates. So again, I find this negative relation. And again, we can conclude that there might be a negative link, and definitely there is a risk of further trapping households in vulnerable settings with regard to climate change and their agricultural production. Now, for the second main result of my dissertation, I conducted a study in Eastern Uganda, this time taking a different approach. I was interested in understanding which factors influence farmers' decision to invest in their agricultural production, and specifically to invest in improved seeds. And for this, I used a methodology called mental models, which comes from psychology. So I asked about 250 farmers to map on a tablet using a specific tool to map their individual decision-making process of investing in improved seeds or not. And they had the option to select from different factors and then also draw on the tablet how strong they see a specific linkage. And here you can see on the slide the aggregate output of this exercise. So you can see the aggregated mental model, and you can see how the different factors are linked to improved seeds investment in the middle. The green arrows mean a positive influence, the red arrows mean a negative influence, and then the thickness of the arrows tells you how important that influence was on average. And I don't want to explain this in detail, but just focusing on the main factors that I was interested in for my research, you can see that tenure security as a factor was actually only included by about 1/3 of participants. But those who did include it attributed a very positive influence to it. So they drew a very thick and green arrow on average. And then the second factor of interest for me were formal land certificates. And this was actually the least chosen factor, which was a bit surprising for me. But here I found very interesting gender differences because women attributed a much more positive influence of formal land certificates compared to men. So this is why I conclude that here this link between tenure security and agricultural investment is really nuanced and depends on the context and also depends on who you ask. And with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, so it's my pleasure to give the laudatio, and given the time that is moving quickly ahead, I'll just say a few words. So we have seen our 3 prize winners. We have listened to their talks. You have also been introduced to the names of the jury. So this is Matthias Beck, who is here, and Maike Wolny, who cannot attend, and myself. I just want to go a little bit through the curriculum vitae of our 3 prize winners. So starting with Dr. Matavel, he did his PhD, as we have seen, at the University of Berlin, Humboldt University of Berlin, under the supervisor, Dr. Stefan Sieber. His PhD was earned in rural development at Lyon University in Mozambique. His MSc studies he did in agricultural sciences at the Ehime University in Mozambique as well. And at present, he's a postdoctoral scientist at the Leibniz Institute of Agricultural Engineering and Bioeconomy in Potsdam, Germany. I think you have realized from his talk how impressive the outcome was of his work. And so what the jury has valued, in addition to the detail of work and the broad scale of analysis that he has done, was that he has managed to publish 5 peer-reviewed articles from his thesis that convincingly show the effectiveness of the technology dissemination, which depends on the awareness and on the cost effectiveness of the training approach. To move on to Dr. Morken, we have just listened to her talk. She has earned her PhD at the University of Kassel-Witzenhausen in cooperation with the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, supervised by Professor Gornot. And her BA was earned in International Relations at the Technical University in Dresden. Her MSc in Environmental Development she did at the London School of Economics and Political Sciences. And she also served as, or was a Carlo Schmidt Fellow at the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO in Rome. And since the COP 2022, she is volunteering at the Conference of Parties as assistant to the discussions. And at the moment, she's leading a working group on the adaptation in agricultural systems at the PIC in Potsdam. The thesis makes a significant contribution to understanding the important role of land tenure in the context of climate change and its implications for smallholder adaptation and resilience. And of the thesis, 4 excellent papers have emerged, of which 3 are already published in high-ranked journals. And her results can inform policy debate on the nexus between land, climate, and food security. So as a key sentence that emerges from the thesis, we thought it is that secure land property rights and smallholder farmers' resilience to weather shocks and climate change are intricately linked and mutually influence each other. Coming to the 3rd prize winner, Dr. Nguyen. She did her PhD in Hohenheim under Professor Volkert Asch. Her PhD in hydrology and environment, her PhD and in water was done at the Water Resources University in Vietnam at Ho Chi Minh City. The master's was earned in life and environmental sciences in the University of Tsukuba in Japan. And in between the bachelor and master and PhD, she worked as a hydrologist in the Southern Regional Hydrometeorological Center in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And at the moment, she's a postdoc at the University of Hohenheim in the HypoWave project, which is looking into implementing hydroponic systems for a recent resource-efficient agricultural water reuse. And Dr. Nguyen has not shown us the very extensive and hard fieldwork that she has done with her different, very sophisticated devices to measure the salinity of soils, not only on the topsoil, but also deep down to the second horizon, or even, I'm not sure how deep she went. But that her work has meticulously combined the physically demanding fieldwork with a lot of geostatistical data analysis. I think that was clear from the one slide she showed with these maps. And this approach, at least for agricultural sciences, is very novel and has the potential for being developed into salinity early warning systems, especially in tropical coastal regions. And also from her thesis, 3 articles have been published in peer-reviewed international journals. In a nutshell, we can say that sea level rise enhances soil salinization risks in tropical river deltas, and the new resistance tomography technology will allow to generate high resolution data for early warning systems that help reduce that risk of cropland salinization. This is a key message from her thesis. And we, the jury members, congratulate all 3 of you very warmly for your achievements.
I invite Lisa Murken. The Foundation Fiat Panis Germany honors Dr. Lisa Murken with its Hermann Eiselen Science Award 2024. The prize winner receives the amount of euro 10,000 for the submitted work, Land Tenure in a Changing Climate. I quote the jury. Dr. Murken makes a significant contribution to understanding the important role of land tenure in the context of climate change and its implication for smallholder adaptation and resilience. It combines innovative ways household panel data with high-resolution weather data, unique primary surveys data, and mental methods. In a very short time frame, Dr. Murken has produced 4 excellent papers. Her results have great potential to inform the policy debate on the nexus between land, climate, and food security. Ulm, Vienna, September 11th, 2024. The director and the members of the jury, congratulations. I invite Dr. Nguyen. The Foundation Fiat Panis Germany honors Dr. Van Hong Nguyen with its Hermann Eiselen Science Award 2024 for the submitted work, Evaluation of Geophysics Methods to Study the Effects of Land Use on Salinity in Rice Production Systems in the Vietnam Mekong Delta. Dr. Nguyen evaluates the potential of novel geoelectrical techniques for detecting salinity in rice fields. Her dissertation builds on innovative, physically and intellectually demanding work. It demonstrates her ability to tackle complex research questions and publish her results in international recognized journals. A novel approach has the potential to be developed into early warning systems for soil salinity in tropical river deltas, where the risk of saltwater intrusion is increasing with the sea level rise due to global warming. Ulm, Vienna, September 11, 2024. Congratulations. Thank you that we first took the ladies, please. The Foundation Fiat Panis Germany honors Dr. Custodio Ephraim Matavel with its Hermann Eiselen Science Award 2024 for his submitted work integrating more efficient renewable energy technologies into food systems in central Mozambique, implications to food and nutrition security. Dr. Matavel explores the impact of optimizing the use of processing energy for food quality and nutrition security in rural Africa. The high interdisciplinary approach contributes significantly to a holistic understanding of the complex issue related to food security. The innovative methods and extensively published findings can inform policymakers and play a key role for mitigating hunger in the food deficit regions. Ulm, Vienna, September 11, 2024. Congratulations.
So thank you very much. I truly apologize. And I thank you so much for your patience. And I hope you forgive us that we are running super late. I should close. I should remind you that we continue at 5. So grab a coffee. I'm very much looking forward to these discussions that are following now. And as a scientist myself, I'm very happy to see so many young researchers. Use the time, sharpen your arguments, enjoy the debate, make new friends and nurture the friendships. We all need hope, encouragement, and fun and dedication for our research and science. Have fun and enjoy your time at the Tropentag. Thank you so much.